Have you ever felt like the weight of life was pressing down on your chest, making every breath feel a little heavier, a little harder to take? In this fast-paced modern world, many of us wake up already exhausted, our minds racing before our feet even touch the floor. The pressure to succeed, to keep up, to earn more, to love perfectly, to hide our flaws, to be endlessly productive, it all builds into a silent storm inside us. Stress becomes the air we breathe, anxiety the rhythm of our hearts. We scroll through glowing screens, comparing ourselves to lives that seem better, easier, more beautiful. Yet behind closed doors, loneliness grows. Fear grows. The quiet ache of something is missing grows, and still we keep moving, as though rushing will finally deliver us to peace. We chase the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next escape, hoping to fill the hollow space within. But no matter how far we run, the emptiness waits patiently, reminding us that the world's promises often fall short. Deep down, we know that the things we are told will bring happiness, status, wealth, recognition, cannot soothe the ache in our souls. This gap between what we long for and what we live through creates suffering that words often fail to capture. Yet suffering, as ancient wisdom teaches, is not the end of the story. It is the doorway. It is the teacher. For thousands of years, the path of the Buddha has offered another way. A way not of blind escape, but of seeing clearly. A way of turning toward our pain instead of away from it. Of touching the very wounds we fear and finding that within them lies unexpected strength. The teachings are not abstract doctrines meant for monks alone. They are practical, grounded insights into how the human heart can find balance even in the chaos of ordinary life. They are about remembering what it means to breathe deeply, to notice a single moment, to live with compassion for ourselves and for others. This journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about coming home to ourselves. It is about loosening the grip of fear and discovering the quiet power of letting go. The stress that once seemed unbearable can become a signal, a guide leading us inward. The anxiety that once kept us trapped can soften when we see its roots and meet it with gentle awareness. Even money struggles, heartbreak, and restless longing can transform, not into quick fixes, but into doorways to wisdom. What you are about to hear is not theory. It is a story that belongs not just to one tradition, but to the shared human experience. It is a journey through 10 struggles of modern life, each paired with a timeless truth from Buddhist teaching. Together, these stories form a path, from stress to calm, from fear to courage, from emptiness to fullness of being. You will hear about the pressures of money and success, the pain of fractured relationships, the grip of anxiety, the cycle of craving, the weight of loneliness, and more. Each challenge will be met with a teaching, not as a sermon, but as an invitation. An invitation to see your own life more clearly, to touch your own wounds more kindly, and to discover the freedom that has always been waiting within you. As you listen, let these words settle slowly. Let them echo not only in your mind, but in your heart. This is not a race. It is not about reaching a finish line. It is about walking step by step, breath by breath, into a gentler way of living. And as we take the first steps together, let us remember this simple truth. The pain we carry is not a prison, but a path. A path that can lead us home. Every day begins with a race. The alarm rings, and before the body can stretch, the mind is already sprinting. Deadlines, bills, meetings, messages, endless lists pile up in the imagination. Even before breakfast, the nervous system hums with tension. This is the reality for so many people. Stress is no longer an occasional visitor. It has become the permanent guest at the table of modern life. People smile while carrying an invisible weight, pretending everything is fine. But inside they feel as though they are unraveling thread by thread. The body feels heavy, The mind feels restless, and peace seems like a distant fantasy dot. This stress shows up in every corner of our existence. In work, where the demand to achieve never ends. In family, where love becomes tangled with expectation. In the quiet of the night, where the heart beats too fast and sleep refuses to come. Even in moments that should feel joyful, there is often an undercurrent of pressure to capture the moment, to share it, to measure up. The very act of living feels like balancing on a rope stretched too tightly. One wrong step, one missed opportunity, and the fear of falling into failure becomes overwhelming. What makes stress so insidious is that it does not simply live in the mind. It seeps into the body, into the bloodstream, into the beating of the heart. Shoulders stiffen, jaws clench, stomachs ache. The immune system weakens, the skin breaks out, headaches become routine companions. Doctors prescribe pills, gyms promise relief, apps provide guided breathing. But beneath the surface, the cycle continues. Stress is not just a condition of the brain. It is a condition of being woven into the way we relate to life itself. Why does stress hold such power over us? At its root, it comes from the stories we tell ourselves. Stories of not being enough, of needing to do more, of fearing that if we pause, the world will move on without us. We live in a culture that glorifies speed and productivity, where rest is seen as laziness and silence is treated as wasted time. So we drive ourselves harder, chasing a horizon that always seems to move just a little further away. And with every step, stress whispers that if we don't keep running, everything will collapse. Yet even as we chase, there is a quiet voice within that longs for something different. A voice that says, there must be more than this endless race. There must be a way to live without feeling constantly pressed, constantly on edge. That longing is not weakness. It is wisdom, buried beneath the noise of fear. It is the soul calling us back to a deeper rhythm, a rhythm the modern world has taught us to forget. Ancient teachings remind us that suffering is not an accident, nor a punishment, but a signal. Stress is a form of suffering, and like all suffering, it can be a teacher if we are willing to listen. The Buddha taught that the first step toward liberation is to recognize suffering for what it is, not to hide it, not to deny it, but to look directly at it. To say, yes, this is what I feel. Yes, this pressure is real. And yes, there might be another way to live. But looking directly at stress can feel terrifying. The instinct is to push it away, to distract ourselves, to drown it in entertainment, food, alcohol, or endless scrolling. Yet avoidance only feeds the beast. The more we resist, the stronger stress grows, looping in cycles of anxiety and exhaustion. True transformation begins not with escape, but with courage, the courage to turn inward and face the storm. Imagine for a moment standing at the edge of an ocean. The waves crash, loud and relentless, pulling at your feet, threatening to drag you under. Stress feels like this ocean. The natural instinct is to run from it, but the ocean cannot be outrun. The only way forward is to learn to float, to stop fighting the water and allow the body to rest upon it. In the same way, we can learn to rest upon stress, to meet it without panic, to ride its waves rather than be swallowed by them. This is where mindfulness enters, not as a trendy word, but as a profound doorway. Mindfulness means remembering to come back, again and again, to the present moment. Not to analyze it, not to judge it, but simply to be here. When the heart races and thoughts spin, mindfulness invites us to pause, to feel the breath moving in and out, to anchor in what is real. It sounds simple, almost too simple for the complexity of our struggles, but it is exactly this simplicity that makes it powerful. With each mindful breath, we remind ourselves that we are not the storm, but the sky that holds it. Stress may rage like thunderclouds, but the sky remains vast, unbroken, untouched. In practice, this means pausing in the middle of a hectic day to notice the sensation of feet on the ground. It means taking one slow breath before answering an angry email. It means feeling the warmth of a cup of tea before the rush of tasks resumes. Small moments of presence begin to stitch a new fabric of being, one where stress no longer dictates every movement. But mindfulness is not just about techniques. It is about a shift in relationship. Instead of treating stress as an enemy, we begin to see it as a signal. The body tightens. That is the body's way of asking for care. The mind spins in circles. That is the mind revealing its own habits of fear. Stress is not here to destroy us. It is here to teach us where we are out of balance. When we stop treating it as a monster and start treating it as a messenger, the weight it carries begins to soften. Still, it is important to acknowledge that this path is not instant. There is no button to delete stress, no formula to erase it overnight. The path is about cultivation, like planting seeds in a garden. The seeds of awareness, of compassion, of patience. Each time we return to the present moment, we water those seeds. Each time we choose a slow breath instead of a harsh reaction, we strengthen them. Over time, the garden of our inner world begins to shift, not because life becomes easier, but because we become steadier. In the beginning, it feels awkward. The mind resists, insisting that there is no time to pause, no room for stillness. But if we trust the process, even for a few minutes each day, we begin to notice changes. The shoulders unclench a little faster. The heart slows a little sooner. The nights of restless spinning begin to quiet. Stress does not vanish, but it loses its grip. What once felt like an endless prison begins to feel like an open field with doors we never noticed before. And as stress loosens, space opens for something else: compassion. Compassion for ourselves, for the way we have carried so much for so long. Compassion for others, who are also struggling silently in their own storms. Compassion transforms stress from an isolating force into a shared human experience. We realize we are not alone in this race. Everyone is running, everyone is tired, everyone is searching for relief. In recognizing this, the walls between us begin to thin, and connection takes root where isolation once grew. This connection is not sentimental. It is practical. When we feel compassion, we naturally soften. We listen more deeply, speak more gently, respond more wisely. And in doing so, we discover that the very stress that once divided us can become a bridge to deeper relationships. Workplaces shift, families shift, communities shift when individuals begin to embody presence and compassion. What starts as a single breath can ripple outward in ways we may never fully see. But before any of this can unfold, we must take the first step, the step of honesty. To admit, yes, I am stressed. Yes, I am tired. Yes, I want another way. This is not weakness. It is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha himself began with this recognition. Life is filled with suffering, not to depress us, but to awaken us. Because when we see suffering clearly, we also see the possibility of its end. Stress may feel permanent, but it is not fixed. It is the product of conditions, the stories we believe, the habits we repeat, the expectations we carry. And what is created by conditions can be changed by new conditions. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Everything is impermanent. Everything can shift. The stress you feel today does not have to define the rest of your life. With awareness, with compassion, with practice, the story can change. As this truth begins to sink in, a question naturally arises. If stress is not inevitable, if there is another way, what does that way look like in daily life? How can we walk it step by step in the middle of bills and jobs and family responsibilities? The answer is not found in theories or distant ideals. It is found in the breath you are taking right now. It is found in the choices you make this very day. And as we move forward, we will begin to see how even the heaviest burdens can be transformed, not by force, but by a gentle shift in the way we see and respond to the world. When we look more closely, we begin to notice that stress is rarely about the present moment itself. It is about the mind's story of the moment. The meeting on the calendar is not stressful by itself. It is the thought, if I fail here, I will lose everything, that makes the heart pound. The unpaid bill is just paper, but the thought, I will never get out of this, tightens the chest. Even the silence of the night is not threatening until the mind fills it with fears of what tomorrow might bring. Stress does not come from life alone. It comes from the meaning we attach to life. This realization is powerful because it means stress is not an unchangeable reality. It means that by changing our relationship to thoughts, we can change the way we experience life. Buddhism calls this insight right view. It is the understanding that suffering is not just about external conditions, but about how we perceive and respond to them. If we can see clearly, if we can separate reality from the stories we layer onto it, we can begin to dissolve the roots of stress. One way to practice this is through awareness of thoughts themselves. Imagine sitting quietly, and instead of fighting thoughts, you begin to observe them. A thought of failure arises, then fades. A thought of fear arises, then fades. A thought of anger arises, then fades. Like clouds drifting across a vast sky, they come and go. You begin to see that thoughts are not permanent, not solid, not commands you must obey. They are simply passing formations. This insight alone can loosen the grip of stress, because what once felt like an overwhelming truth now appears as a temporary ripple. But awareness of thoughts is not enough by itself. Compassion must accompany it. Without compassion, awareness can become cold, even harsh. You notice your stress, but you judge yourself for it, thinking, I should be stronger, I should be better. This only adds another layer of pressure. True transformation comes when awareness is gentle. When you notice stress and say, here is stress again. Here is my body tightening. Here is my heart racing. When you place a hand on your chest and breathe kindly into your own pain, compassion turns awareness from a mirror into a healing light. This is not abstract theory. It is something you can feel in the smallest of moments. Imagine being stuck in traffic, the red lights endless, the horns blaring. The body tenses, frustration rises, the mind spins with anger at wasted time. In that moment, if you take one conscious breath, if you soften your grip on the wheel and notice the simple fact of being alive, stress begins to shift. The traffic does not change, but your relationship to it does. The prison becomes less tight, the air inside expands, and what was once unbearable becomes something you can meet with patience. The Buddha compared the mind to a garden. Whatever seeds we water will grow. If we water seeds of worry, stress will thrive. If we water seeds of awareness and compassion, peace will thrive. Modern life waters worry constantly, through news, through comparison, through relentless demands. But we are not powerless gardeners. Each breath of mindfulness is a drop of water for peace. Each act of kindness toward ourselves is sunlight for resilience. Over time, this cultivation creates an inner environment where stress cannot dominate. Still, there is a temptation to see mindfulness as another tool for productivity, another way to manage stress so we can keep running faster. But true mindfulness is not about making us more efficient machines. It is about remembering we are not machines at all. We are human beings, fragile and tender, meant to live with rhythm, not constant acceleration. Mindfulness is not a strategy to squeeze more work into the day. It is a reminder that life itself is precious, and that to be present for even one breath is to taste a kind of freedom that no achievement can buy. And yet, The world will keep pressing. Bills must be paid. Children must be cared for. Jobs must be done. How then can these teachings apply in real life where responsibilities never stop? The answer lies in integration. Practice is not meant to be locked away in meditation halls. It belongs in kitchens, in offices, in classrooms, in bedrooms. Washing dishes becomes practice when we feel the warm water on our hands instead of rushing to finish. Walking down a hallway becomes practice when we notice the sensation of our feet instead of being lost in thought. Speaking to a friend becomes practice when we truly listen instead of waiting to reply. In this way, stress becomes less of a monster to be slain and more of a signal pointing us back to presence. As we integrate, we discover another layer: impermanence. Stress feels eternal in the moment, but it never lasts forever. Every wave rises and falls. Every storm passes. This is not just poetic. It is the law of nature. When we truly see impermanence, stress loses much of its power. We no longer believe the mind's story that says, "This will never end." We begin to trust that all things change. The Buddha taught that clinging to what is impermanent causes suffering. By remembering impermanence, we loosen the grip of clinging, and in that loosening, stress softens. Consider the way seasons change. No matter how long winter feels, spring always returns. In the same way, no matter how long stress feels, peace is always possible. This perspective does not erase difficulty, but it gives us courage to endure it without drowning. It gives us patience to wait for the shift, knowing it will come. And when it does, we taste the sweetness of relief all the more deeply because we understand it as part of life's natural rhythm. There is also wisdom in seeing that stress often arises from craving. We crave success, security, approval, control. We crave things to be different from what they are. This craving fuels dissatisfaction, which fuels stress. The Buddha called this the root of suffering, the endless grasping after what is not here. To reduce stress, we must learn to release some of this grasping, not to give up ambition or care, but to hold them lightly. To say, "I will do my best, but I do not need to control everything." This lightness is freedom. It is the difference between rowing frantically against the current and allowing the boat to move with the river's flow. Asterisk. This is why mindfulness and compassion are inseparable from letting go. Letting go does not mean abandoning responsibilities. It means releasing the illusion that we can control outcomes. It means offering our efforts sincerely, then trusting the flow of life. When we cling tightly, stress multiplies. When we open the hand, stress loosens. Letting go is not defeat. It is the wisdom of recognizing that life is larger than our grip. In the midst of all this, we also learn the importance of community. Stress isolates us, convincing us we must carry everything alone. But when we open up, when we share our burdens with others, stress begins to dissolve. Sangha, or spiritual community, was central to the Buddha's teaching. It is a reminder that healing does not happen in isolation. Whether it is a circle of friends, a support group, a meditation class, or simply one trusted companion, community reminds us we are not alone. And in that reminder, stress loses much of its sting. Even as we practice individually, community magnifies our strength. One person breathing mindfully influences others without words. A calm presence in a chaotic workplace shifts the atmosphere. A compassionate response to anger softens hearts. Stress thrives in separation, but it weakens in connection. To walk the path together is to multiply resilience, to share light in the dark places of life. All of these insights, awareness, compassion, impermanence, letting go, community are not separate pieces, but threads of the same fabric. Together, they weave a way of living where stress no longer rules us. Stress may arise, but it does not dominate. It may visit, but it does not stay. We meet it with presence. We soften it with compassion. We release it with letting go. We endure it with patience. We dissolve it with connection. In this way, stress transforms from an enemy into a teacher, guiding us deeper into wisdom. And so we arrive at a quiet truth. The path is not about removing stress from life. That is impossible. Life will always bring challenges, surprises, demands. The path is about changing our relationship to stress so that it no longer breaks us. Instead, it shapes us, strengthens us, teaches us. The very thing we feared becomes the very thing that awakens us. As this understanding grows, a new kind of confidence takes root. Not the confidence that says, I can control everything, but the confidence that says, I can face whatever comes. This is the confidence of the grounded tree, whose branches sway in storms, but whose roots hold firm. It is the confidence of the mountain, unmoved by passing clouds. It is the confidence of the heart that knows, whatever stress arises, peace is always one breath away. From here, the journey deepens. Stress may have been the first doorway, but it is not the only one. Beyond stress lies the pain of money struggles, the fear of scarcity, the endless chase for security that leaves so many feeling trapped. Just as we have seen with stress, these struggles too can become teachers. They too hold the seeds of awakening if we are willing to look. And so, as we step forward, we will turn our gaze toward the next great challenge of modern life. The weight of money, the endless desire for more, and the wisdom that can free us from its grip. Money has become the modern symbol of survival, security, and success. From the moment we wake, thoughts of money often begin to creep in. The mortgage payment, the rising cost of groceries, the debt that lingers like a shadow, the constant sense that there is never quite enough. For some, money is an endless chase for more, a race that never feels finished. For others, it is the daily fear of falling behind, of not being able to provide for family, of slipping into poverty. In either case, money is rarely just numbers on a page. It is loaded with meaning, self-worth, identity, safety, power. And because of that, it becomes one of the deepest sources of stress and suffering in modern life. This suffering does not come only from poverty. Even people with wealth often feel trapped. They fear losing what they have. They feel pressure to maintain appearances. They struggle with greed and never seem satisfied. There is always a bigger house, a newer car, a higher status, a higher goal. And so, whether rich or poor, the grip of money can feel like chains around the heart. The world tells us that if we just had more, we would finally be free. But when more arrives, it quickly feels like not enough. The cycle continues, a treadmill that spins faster and faster while offering no true arrival. This cycle creates not only financial stress, but also emotional wounds. Couples fight over money, friendships fracture over debts, families crumble under inheritance battles. Children grow up internalizing scarcity, carrying fear and insecurity into adulthood. People compromise their values, working jobs they despise or sacrificing their health for the promise of security. In the name of money, so many souls become weary, hollowed out, exhausted. And yet, society praises the sacrifice, calling it ambition, calling it success. If we look closely, money itself is neutral. A piece of paper, a digital number, a simple tool of exchange. What makes it heavy is the meaning we place upon it. We cling to it as though it were life itself. We equate it with safety, believing that without it, we are nothing. But money cannot protect us from sickness, from aging, from death. It cannot guarantee love or happiness. It cannot fill the emptiness of a lonely heart. It can buy comfort, but it cannot buy peace. And when we confuse the two, we suffer. Buddhism teaches that craving is the root of suffering. Money becomes suffering not because of money itself, but because of craving. Craving for more, craving for stability, craving for identity through wealth. Craving is endless. The Buddha compared it to drinking salt water. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. No amount of money can satisfy craving, because craving is not about the object, but about the restless hunger within. To heal, we must look not at the bank account, but at the mind that clings to it. This does not mean abandoning money or pretending it does not matter. We need money for food, shelter, medicine, but we can learn to hold it differently. Instead of clinging tightly, we can hold it with open hands. Instead of measuring our worth by it, we can remember that worth is inherent, not purchased. Instead of chasing endlessly, we can practice enoughness, the radical idea that what we have right now can be sufficient. Imagine a person sitting at a table with a simple bowl of rice. They eat slowly, tasting each grain, feeling gratitude for the nourishment. Their body is sustained, their heart is calm. Now imagine another person at a lavish banquet, plates overflowing, yet their mind races with thoughts of the next meal, the next purchase, the next acquisition. Which one is richer? The answer reveals a profound truth. Wealth is not measured by what we possess, but by how we relate to what we possess. Mindfulness offers a practical doorway here. The next time you spend money, pause and notice your state of mind. Are you buying from fear? From craving? From comparison? Or are you buying from wisdom, from care, from genuine need? This simple pause begins to transform money from a chain into a tool. Instead of being enslaved by it, you begin to guide it with awareness. That generosity is another powerful antidote. When we give, we loosen the grip of fear and craving. We remind ourselves that abundance is not about hoarding, but about flowing. Even a small act of generosity, a coin, a kind meal, a helping hand, breaks the illusion of scarcity. The Buddha praised generosity, not because it benefits others alone, but because it frees the giver. It opens the heart, it softens greed, it creates joy that money itself can never provide. Consider the story of a poor woman who offered a single candle at a temple. To her, it was a great sacrifice, but she gave it with pure intention. That candle burned brightly, and in her heart, she felt richer than any treasure could make her. This story is not about religion, but about perspective. When we give, we discover that our value does not lie in what we hold, but in what we share. The teaching of impermanence also reshapes our relationship with money. Wealth comes and goes. Fortunes rise and fall. The economy shifts, jobs disappear, markets crash. To base our entire identity on money is to tie ourselves to a boat on stormy seas. But when we remember impermanence, we stop clinging so tightly. We learn to navigate change with more ease, trusting that loss is not the end of us, and that true security lies deeper than any account balance. This deeper security is the security of inner stability, the calm that comes from knowing who we are beyond wealth, the peace that arises when we no longer measure ourselves by external standards. This kind of wealth cannot be stolen, cannot be lost, cannot be spent away. It is the wealth of wisdom, of compassion, of presence. The Buddha described it as the jewel within, more precious than gold or silver dot. To cultivate this wealth, we begin by noticing the stories we tell ourselves about money. We ask, what do I believe money says about me? What fears arise when I think of not having enough? What cravings drive me to want more, even when my needs are met? These questions are not meant to create shame, but to shine light on the patterns that keep us bound. Awareness reveals that so much of our suffering around money is not about money itself, but about the way our minds have been conditioned to see it. When awareness grows, we can begin to practice enoughness. Enoughness does not mean never striving, never improving. It means recognizing that right here, Right now, there is already sufficiency. Enough food, enough shelter, enough breath. Enough to live this moment fully. When we rest in enoughness, the endless hunger quiets. Gratitude rises. Peace returns. Imagine walking through a store. Everywhere, advertisements shout, "You need this. You must have this. Without this, you are incomplete." The mind reacts with craving, but with awareness, you pause. You breathe. You ask, "Do I truly need this? Or is this just another story of not enough?" That pause is revolutionary. It cuts through the illusion, and in that moment, you are free. The practice of enoughness ripples outward. In relationships, it softens jealousy. In work, it tempers burnout. In daily life, it turns ordinary moments into treasures. The sun on your face, the laughter of a child, the taste of simple food, these become signs of abundance. Wealth is no longer something distant and scarce. It is here, in the richness of life itself. Of course, the mind will resist. Conditioned by years of scarcity and comparison, it will argue, "No, I need more. No, this is not enough." This is where compassion returns as a guide. Instead of battling the voice, you meet it with kindness. You say, "I see you, fear. I see you, craving. Thank you for trying to protect me. But I am safe. I am alive. I have enough." Over time, this gentle dialogue transforms the inner landscape. Fear softens, craving loosens, and contentment takes root out in this way. Money becomes not a tyrant, but a teacher. It reveals our attachments, our fears, our cravings. And in revealing them, it offers us the chance to let go. Each dollar, each transaction, becomes an opportunity to practice awareness, generosity, enoughness. Money remains necessary, but it no longer defines us. It becomes a tool we use wisely, rather than a chain that uses us. And so, as we walk this path, we begin to discover a paradox. True security comes not from holding tightly to money, but from loosening our grip on it. The less we cling, the freer we feel. The freer we feel, the more peace we carry. And that peace is the greatest wealth of all. From here, the question naturally arises. If enoughness is possible, if freedom from money's chains is real, how do we deepen it in the middle of daily life, where bills still arrive and needs must still be met? The answer leads us into the next step of this journey, to explore not just how we see money, but how we live with it, day by day, moment by moment, in choices large and small. It is here, in the fabric of daily living, that wisdom becomes practical and peace becomes possible. The challenge with money is that it touches every aspect of life. It influences our choices of work, our relationships, even our sense of self-worth. Because of this, the suffering around money often feels unavoidable. Yet when we look more carefully, we realize that it is not money itself that causes the deepest wounds. It is the way we relate to it. We treat money as though it were oxygen, believing that without it, we cannot survive. This belief drives us to desperation, and desperation drives us to compromise the very values that make life meaningful. We see this in workplaces everywhere. People endure jobs that drain their spirit, sacrificing health and joy for the promise of financial stability. Others chase higher salaries endlessly, only to find that no amount of income quiets the restlessness within. Still others gamble away what little they have, seduced by the dream of sudden wealth. In every case, the root problem is not money, but attachment. Attachment tells us we must cling, we must accumulate, we must never stop striving. The more we cling, the more trapped we feel. The Buddha's wisdom offers another perspective. He taught that freedom comes not from rejecting life, but from changing our relationship with it. With money, this means shifting from attachment to stewardship. Instead of clinging, we care. Instead of hoarding, we share. Instead of seeing money as identity, we see it as a tool. This shift is not easy, but it is possible. And when it happens, the chains of financial suffering begin to loosen. Stewardship begins with awareness. Each time money enters our lives, through salary, through a purchase, through a bill, we pause and notice. What stories arise in the mind? Is there fear? Greed? Gratitude? By observing without judgment, we begin to understand the patterns that govern our relationship with money. Awareness reveals that much of our suffering comes not from reality, but from imagined fears. The bill is just a number, but the mind turns it into catastrophe. The paycheck is just a transaction, but the mind turns it into identity. With awareness, we see these stories for what they are, fleeting thoughts, not solid truths. Once awareness opens the door, compassion keeps it open. Compassion for ourselves, for the years we have lived under the weight of scarcity. Compassion for our families, who carry their own financial fears. Compassion for all beings, many of whom struggle daily with hunger and poverty. Compassion transforms money from a cold calculation into a human story. It reminds us that behind every dollar, there is a person, a life, a heart. With compassion, we treat money not as a weapon of comparison, but as a bridge of connection. Generosity is the natural expression of this compassion. Even when we have little, we can give something: time, energy, kindness. The act of giving frees us from the prison of fear. It reminds us that abundance is not about how much we hold, but how much we flow. The Buddha once praised a monk not for his wealth, but for his willingness to share a simple bowl of food. That monk's wealth was not in possessions, but in freedom from clinging. When we give, even in small ways, we taste that same freedom. At the same time, wisdom guides us to balance. Generosity does not mean recklessness. Stewardship includes caring for ourselves, providing for those who depend on us, making choices with clarity. The middle way, the balance between excess and deprivation, applies to money as well. We need not reject money, nor worship it. We simply hold it lightly, using it with wisdom, guided by compassion. This balance allows us to live responsibly without being consumed by fear or greed. Another practice that reshapes our relationship with money is gratitude. Each time we receive, we pause and give thanks. Each time we spend, we acknowledge the gift it brings. Gratitude turns ordinary transactions into sacred exchanges. Buying food becomes a moment of connection with the farmers who grew it, the workers who transported it, the earth that nourished it. Paying rent becomes a recognition of shelter, of safety, of the roof above our heads. Gratitude does not erase financial challenges, but it shifts the heart from scarcity to sufficiency. It trains the mind to see not only what is missing, but also what is present. Scarcity often whispers that we must compete, that there is not enough for all. But gratitude reveals the opposite, that abundance is everywhere, if only we notice. The sun shines freely, the breath flows freely, the earth offers beauty freely. When we anchor in this perspective, the fear of not enough begins to soften. We realize that true wealth is not measured by accounts, but by presence, by connection, by the capacity to appreciate what is already here. Of course, there will be times when financial hardship is real, when bills cannot be paid, when the weight feels unbearable. In those moments, the teachings do not dismiss the pain. They invite us to meet it with honesty and compassion. To say, yes, this is difficult. Yes, I feel afraid. And then to remember impermanence, this too will pass. To remember community, I am not alone. To remember enoughness, even in hardship, there is something to be grateful for. These reminders do not erase difficulty, but they give us strength to endure it without losing ourselves. It is also important to see that the suffering of money is not only personal, but collective. Entire systems are built on inequality, keeping some in wealth and others in poverty. Awareness calls us not only to heal our own relationship with money, but also to act with compassion in the world, to support fairness, to share resources, to create communities where generosity replaces exploitation. In this way, our personal practice ripples outward into social transformation. The Buddha often spoke of wealth as dangerous when it creates arrogance or greed, but also as beneficial when used with wisdom. He encouraged generosity, fairness, and care for others. These teachings remind us that money itself is not evil nor holy. It is simply energy, shaped by the intention with which we use it. When guided by greed, it creates suffering. When guided by compassion, it creates healing. The choice is always ours. In daily life. This means asking simple but profound questions. Is this purchase aligned with my values? Is this work nourishing my spirit or draining it? Is this saving rooted in wisdom or in fear? Is this giving done with sincerity or with attachment to recognition? These questions turn money from an unconscious habit into a conscious practice. They transform each transaction into an opportunity for awakening. Over time, this practice creates freedom. Not freedom from financial responsibility, but freedom from the chains of fear and craving. Bills will still come, markets will still shift, but inside, the heart remains steady. We begin to live not as slaves to money, but as stewards of it. We work, we earn, we spend, we give, all with awareness, compassion, and balance. And in this way, the suffering once caused by money becomes a path to wisdom. As we step back and look at the larger journey, we see how money, like stress, reveals the deeper patterns of the human mind. Stress shows us our attachment to control. Money shows us our attachment to security and identity. Both invite us to let go. Both invite us to return to presence. Both invite us to discover a freedom that cannot be bought, cannot be lost, cannot be taken away. And so, as we close this reflection on money, we prepare to enter the next realm of suffering that so many carry, the pain of relationships. Just as money promises security but often delivers fear, relationships promise love but often deliver heartbreak. We long for connection, yet we stumble into conflict. We crave intimacy, yet we find ourselves trapped in loneliness, even within partnerships. Here, too, the wisdom of the Buddha shines, offering a way to transform the pain of human connection into a doorway to compassion and true love. Human beings are born with an instinct for connection. From the moment of birth, a child seeks the warmth of touch, the comfort of a voice, the assurance of being held. Throughout life, this need does not fade. We long for intimacy, for love, for friendship, for belonging. And yet, for many, relationships become a source of the deepest suffering. We argue with partners. We feel misunderstood by friends. We drift apart from family. Even in marriages that look perfect from the outside, silence grows between two hearts. The promise of love becomes entangled with disappointment, resentment, or loneliness. This suffering cuts deeply because relationships mirror our deepest desires and fears. We want to be seen, yet we fear rejection. We want to be loved, yet we fear losing control. We want closeness, yet we fear being hurt. These conflicting needs create a push and pull that leaves us exhausted. A partner's words can lift us to joy or plunge us into despair. A friend's absence can make us feel invisible. A child's rejection can feel like failure. And so, what should be the greatest source of comfort often becomes the greatest source of pain. In modern culture, the pressure around relationships is immense. Movies, songs, and advertisements present a vision of perfect romance, flawless families, endless happiness. We internalize these ideals and measure our real connections against them. Inevitably, reality falls short. Partners argue, children rebel, friends drift, families fracture. Instead of embracing imperfection, we cling to the fantasy of how things should be. This gap between expectation and reality becomes a breeding ground for frustration and despair. The pain of relationships is not limited to conflict. Loneliness is another silent epidemic. Surrounded by people, connected through digital networks, many still feel isolated. We scroll through images of others' lives, yet feel unseen in our own. Loneliness gnaws at the heart, whispering that we are unworthy of love, that we do not belong. It makes the world feel cold, even when it is filled with people. In this way, both conflict and loneliness reveal the same root, a deep longing to be connected and a deep misunderstanding of what true connection is. The Buddha's teachings offer profound insight here. He taught that suffering arises from attachment and aversion. In relationships, we attach to expectations. You must love me in this way. You must never change. You must fulfill my needs. When reality does not meet these expectations, we suffer. We also fall into aversion, pushing away the parts of others we dislike, trying to mold them into versions that fit our image. This constant clinging and rejecting creates endless tension. No person can live up to the fantasy of another's mind. True love, in Buddhist wisdom, is not about possession or control. It is about freedom. The Buddha described 4 immeasurable qualities of love: loving kindness, compassion, joy in the happiness of others, and equanimity. These are not feelings we demand from others, but states we cultivate within ourselves. When we practice loving kindness, we wish for others to be happy, not because they fulfill us, but because happiness is their natural right. When we practice compassion, we open our hearts to their suffering without judgment. When we practice joy in others' joy, we celebrate rather than compete. And when we practice equanimity, we love without clinging, without trying to control or possess. Imagine a couple locked in argument. Each insists the other is wrong. Each defends their position. The space between them fills with anger. But if one pauses, breathes, and remembers compassion, the tone shifts. Instead of attacking, they listen. Instead of defending, they soften. The argument does not vanish, but the walls begin to crumble. Love becomes less about winning and more about understanding. This is the power of the 4 immeasurables in daily life. Yet relationships also reveal our own inner wounds. Often, the pain we feel in connection is not only about the other person, but about the unresolved stories we carry within. A partner's criticism reopens childhood wounds of not being enough. A friend's distance triggers old fears of abandonment. A child's defiance awakens buried shame. Unless we recognize this, we project our wounds outward, blaming others for pain that began long before they arrived. Relationships become distorted mirrors, reflecting not just reality, but our unhealed past. Here lies the invitation to use relationships as teachers. When pain arises, we ask, what is this showing me about myself? What old wound is being touched? Instead of lashing out, we turn inward with curiosity. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it helps us see the deeper layers of our suffering. The other person may be the trigger, but the root often lies within. By facing our inner wounds, we begin to heal, and as we heal, our relationships naturally transform. Mindfulness is the foundation of this healing. In conversation, it means listening fully without preparing a rebuttal. It means noticing the tone of our voice, the tension in our body, the stories racing through our mind. It means pausing before reacting, choosing a response rather than a reflex. This practice turns ordinary interactions into opportunities for awakening. A heated argument becomes a chance to practice patience. A moment of loneliness becomes a chance to practice loving kindness toward ourselves. Every encounter becomes a mirror, reflecting the state of our heart. Compassion extends this practice further. Instead of seeing others only as sources of pain or pleasure, we see them as fellow beings who also suffer. who also long for happiness. This shift dissolves the illusion of separation. A partner who frustrates us, the friend who disappoints us, the stranger who ignores us, all are human, all are vulnerable, all are walking their own path of struggle. When we remember this, anger softens into empathy, and judgment softens into understanding. Of course, compassion does not mean tolerating harm. Wisdom must balance compassion. Sometimes the most loving act is to set boundaries, to step away from toxic dynamics, to say no with clarity. The Buddha's path is not about passivity, but about wise response. When we act with both compassion and wisdom, we honor our own well-being while still holding others in kindness. This balance protects us from both bitterness and self-sacrifice. In loneliness, the same wisdom applies. The longing for connection often leads us to chase love desperately, to accept relationships that harm us, or to cling to anyone who offers attention. But true freedom comes from cultivating connection within ourselves first. When we sit in silence and breathe with awareness, we discover that we are not truly alone. The breath connects us to life itself. Compassion connects us to all beings who also breathe, who also suffer, who also long for love. Loneliness begins to dissolve when we realize that separation is an illusion. Gratitude also reshapes relationships. Instead of focusing on what is missing, we appreciate what is present. A kind word, a shared laugh, a moment of understanding. Gratitude turns ordinary gestures into treasures. A partner's small act of care becomes a reminder of love. A friend's presence, even if imperfect, becomes a gift. Gratitude shifts the mind from scarcity to abundance, softening the sharp edges of disappointment. Relationships, like all things, are impermanent. People change, bonds shift, life moves on. To cling to permanence is to invite suffering. But when we embrace impermanence, we learn to love more deeply. We cherish each moment because we know it cannot last. We appreciate each person because we know they, like us, are fragile and fleeting. This awareness turns love into a practice of presence, not possession. Instead of demanding forever, we treasure now. And so, the path of relationships in Buddhist wisdom is not about finding perfect partners or perfect families. It is about transforming the way we love. It is about shifting from attachment to freedom, from expectation to presence, from control to compassion. In this transformation, relationships cease to be prisons of suffering and become paths of awakening. From here, a new question arises. If relationships can be teachers, how do we continue to walk this path when pain still arises, when wounds are still raw, when love feels fragile? The answer leads us deeper into the practice of forgiveness, of patience, of cultivating joy in the happiness of others. It leads us to see that every conflict, every heartbreak, every moment of loneliness is not an obstacle, but an opening to love more wisely, more freely, more deeply. Forgiveness is one of the most challenging yet liberating practices in relationships. Holding on to resentment is like gripping a burning coal, hoping it will harm the other person, while in truth, it only burns our own hand. Many people carry years, even decades, of bitterness toward partners, parents, friends, or colleagues. The weight of these grudges becomes a second suffering, heavier than the original wound. The Buddha taught that anger is like poison we drink, expecting it to hurt someone else. Forgiveness, then, is not about excusing harmful behavior. It is about releasing ourselves from the prison of anger. Forgiveness begins with honesty. We acknowledge the hurt. We do not minimize it or pretend it does not matter. But we also recognize that holding on will not change the past. It only robs us of peace in the present. By letting go, we free our hearts to heal. This does not always happen instantly. Forgiveness is often a gradual process, like slowly loosening a knot. Some days the knot feels tight again. Other days it loosens a little more. With patience and compassion, the knot eventually releases dot in the same way. Self-forgiveness is vital. Many suffer not only from what others have done, but from guilt about their own mistakes. We replay harsh words we said, opportunities we missed, relationships we damaged. We hold ourselves in chains of shame. Yet the truth is that all beings make mistakes. We act out of ignorance, fear, or pain. Self-forgiveness does not mean denying responsibility. It means recognizing our humanity and offering ourselves the same compassion we would offer a dear friend. Without self-forgiveness, true healing in relationships remains incomplete. Patience is another essential practice. Relationships test patience like nothing else. Differences in habits, opinions, and desires create friction. Impatience demands instant change. You must be different now. You must meet my needs immediately. But life does not bend to impatience. Change takes time. Healing takes time. Understanding takes time. Patience allows space for growth. It allows us to breathe before reacting, to wait before judging, to trust that transformation unfolds gradually. The Buddha compared patience to a strong shield that protects us from anger. With patience, the flames of conflict do not consume us. Another powerful quality is joy in the happiness of others. So often, relationships falter because of comparison and jealousy. A friend succeeds, and instead of celebrating, we feel threatened. A partner finds joy in something outside the relationship, and we feel insecure. This grasping suffocates love. But when we cultivate joy in others' joy, we shift from competition to celebration. We discover that happiness is not a limited resource. Another's joy does not diminish ours. It expands it. Practicing this quality, we learn to smile sincerely at others' successes, to delight in their freedom, to love without clinging. Together, these practices, forgiveness, patience, joy, reshape the very foundation of relationships. They remind us that love is not about control, not about possession, not about endless negotiation of needs. Love, in its truest form, is a generous state of being. It is a willingness to offer kindness, understanding, and presence, regardless of conditions. It is the freedom to care without demanding in return. Of course, this does not mean relationships are always easy. There will still be disagreements, disappointments, separations. The difference is that when we approach these challenges with awareness and compassion, they no longer destroy us. We can face them with steadiness, learning from them rather than being broken by them. Each challenge becomes another opportunity to deepen wisdom. One practical way to live this wisdom is through mindful communication. So many conflicts escalate, not because of the issue itself, but because of how we speak. Harsh words, defensive tones, unspoken assumptions. These create walls. Mindful communication invites us to slow down, to speak with clarity and kindness, to listen with openness. Before speaking, we ask, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? These three questions, taught in Buddhist tradition, transform conversations. They turn communication into a bridge instead of a battlefield. Listening is equally vital. True listening means setting aside the urge to respond, to defend, to fix. It means being fully present with the other person's words, feelings, and silences. Often, what people most need is not advice or solutions, but to be heard. When we listen deeply, without judgment, we offer a profound gift. We tell the other person, your experience matters. Your feelings are valid. You are seen. This simple act of presence can heal wounds more powerfully than any argument ever could. In the face of loneliness. These same practices apply inwardly. Forgiveness means forgiving ourselves for the times we isolated or withdrew. Patience means trusting that connection will come in its own time. Joy means celebrating small moments of connection, a smile from a stranger, a kind word from a neighbor. And mindful communication means being gentle with our own inner dialogue, replacing self-criticism with self-kindness. These practices remind us that the foundation of all relationships is the relationship with ourselves. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we create the capacity to extend it to others. Community plays a vital role here. Isolation deepens suffering, while connection heals it. Sangha, the community of practitioners, was central to the Buddha's teaching. He knew that the path cannot be walked alone. In community, we find support, encouragement, and mirrors for our own growth. Even in modern life, community is essential. Whether through spiritual groups, circles of friends, or simple acts of reaching out, community reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles. Together, we learn, we heal, we grow. At the heart of all this is the recognition of impermanence. Relationships, like all things, are subject to change. People come and go. Love shifts form. Friendships evolve. Families transform. To cling to permanence is to resist reality. But to embrace impermanence is to love fully while we can. It is to treasure each moment, knowing it cannot be repeated. This awareness deepens gratitude and softens grief. It teaches us to say, "Thank you for this time, for this connection, for this love," even when it must end. Ultimately, relationships are not obstacles to awakening, but vehicles for it. Each argument teaches us patience. Each heartbreak teaches us compassion. Each moment of loneliness teaches us presence. Through relationships, we learn to see ourselves more clearly, to heal old wounds, to expand our capacity for love. They are not perfect, and they are not meant to be. They are the ground on which we practice thought. As this truth sinks in, we begin to feel lighter. We no longer demand that relationships save us from suffering. Instead, we see them as partners in the journey. We share joy when it arises. We hold each other in compassion when pain comes. We forgive, we listen, we learn. And through it all, love grows not as possession, but as freedom. From here, the path opens to the next great challenge of modern life: anxiety. Even when stress is eased, money balanced, and relationships cared for, many still wake with a racing heart, a restless mind, an undercurrent of fear that never fully leaves. Anxiety is the silent hum of modern existence, buzzing beneath everything we do. It is time now to turn toward this hum, to listen to it, and to discover how Buddhist wisdom can transform anxiety from a prison into a doorway to presence. Anxiety is like a shadow that follows us everywhere. It hovers when we wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding for no clear reason. It sits beside us in meetings, whispering that we are not good enough. It intrudes on moments of joy, reminding us of what could go wrong. Anxiety is not always loud. Sometimes it is a quiet hum beneath everything, a restlessness that never lets us settle. It tells us that something is always missing, that danger is always near, that peace is never safe to trust. Unlike stress, which often comes from external demands, anxiety often arises from within. It is the fear of what has not yet happened, the dread of imagined futures, the endless what-if loop that spins without resolution. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if they leave me? What if the worst happens? These questions echo endlessly, and no amount of reassurance seems to silence them. Even when things are going well, anxiety invents new scenarios, new fears, new possibilities of collapse. It is a mind trapped in tomorrow, unable to rest in today. The body pays the price. Anxiety tightens the chest, shortens the breath, twists the stomach. It sends waves of adrenaline through the system, preparing us for danger that never comes. The heart races, the hands sweat, the muscles ache. Doctors call it a disorder, prescribing medication, therapy, routines. These can help, but often the root remains untouched, the way the mind clings to fear as though it were truth. Anxiety is not simply a malfunction of the brain. It is the mind's attempt to control the uncontrollable. Modern culture amplifies anxiety. News headlines scream disaster. Social media bombards us with comparisons. Productivity culture tells us we are never doing enough. Even relaxation becomes another task. Are we meditating correctly? Exercising enough? Sleeping well? Every corner of life becomes a test we fear we are failing. Anxiety thrives in this environment, feeding on constant pressure, constant judgment, constant uncertainty. Yet, as overwhelming as it feels, anxiety is not the enemy. In Buddhist teaching, it is a form of dukkha, or suffering a messenger that reveals where we are clinging. Anxiety clings to certainty, to control, to safety. It cannot tolerate uncertainty, so it fills the unknown with fear. But the truth of life is impermanence. Nothing is certain, nothing is fixed. The attempt to secure certainty in an uncertain world is the very fuel of anxiety. The path forward is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to befriend it. This begins with mindfulness. When anxiety rises, the instinct is to run, to distract, to suppress, to drown it out. But mindfulness invites us to pause and look directly at the anxiety. To notice, here is a racing heart, here is a tight chest, here is a thought of failure. By naming it gently, this is anxiety. We step out of identification. We are not the anxiety. We are the awareness noticing it at first. This feels impossible. Anxiety screams that if we don't react, disaster will come. But if we stay with it, breathing slowly, grounding in the present, we begin to see that anxiety, like all things, rises and falls. It is a wave, not a permanent reality. Each time we sit with it without running, we weaken its hold. We learn that we can survive its storm, that it cannot truly harm us. One simple practice is mindful breathing. When the mind spins into the future, the breath anchors us in the now. Breathing in, we say silently, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, we say, I know I am breathing out. Nothing else matters in that moment. The mind may wander, the fear may return, but again and again, we return to the breath. This is not escape. It is training. Training the mind to stay with what is real, instead of drowning in what is imagined. Grounding practices also help. Feeling the feet on the earth, touching a hand to the chest, listening to the sounds around us. These simple acts bring us back to the body, back to the present moment where anxiety has less power. The Buddha often emphasized mindfulness of the body as a doorway to peace. When the mind is too restless, the body becomes the anchor. Compassion is essential in this journey. Anxiety often brings shame. Why can't I handle this? Why am I so weak? These judgments only intensify the pain. Instead, we practice self-compassion. We say, this is hard. This is painful. May I be gentle with myself. Compassion does not erase anxiety, but it softens its edges. It allows us to hold the fear with kindness, like a parent holding a frightened child. This soft holding begins to transform anxiety from an enemy into a teacher. Anxiety's teacher role becomes clear when we ask, what is it pointing to? Often, it reveals our deepest attachments. Fear of losing a job reveals attachment to security. Fear of rejection reveals attachment to approval. Fear of failure reveals attachment to identity. By looking at anxiety with curiosity, we can trace it to its root. And once we see the root, we can begin to loosen it. For example, imagine preparing for a presentation. Anxiety rises. What if I forget my words? What if they laugh at me? What if I fail? Instead of drowning in fear, we pause. We ask, what am I truly afraid of? Perhaps it is the fear of not being seen as competent. That reveals attachment to reputation. By seeing this, we can shift. We remind ourselves, Reputation is impermanent. My worth is not defined by performance. What matters is presence, sincerity, honesty. With this shift, anxiety loses some of its grip. Impermanence again becomes a key. Anxiety clings to the illusion that the present moment predicts the future. But the future is unknowable. Life is fluid, constantly changing. To live in fear of every possibility is to suffer twice, once in imagination, once in reality. The Buddha advised, do not chase the future. Do not dwell in the past. Live in the present moment. Anxiety collapses when we return fully to now. Community is also a powerful medicine. Anxiety isolates us, convincing us we are alone in our fears. But when we share, we discover that many carry the same burdens. In Sangha, or community, we find safety and togetherness. Simply hearing another say, I feel this too, can dissolve the illusion of isolation. Anxiety thrives in silence. It weakens in connection. Generosity too can heal anxiety. When we focus solely on our fears, the world narrows. But when we act for others offering kindness, service, support, the world widens. Anxiety loosens when we shift from self-absorption to compassion. Helping another does not erase our problems, but it places them in perspective. It reminds us that life is bigger than our fears, that meaning arises not from control, but from connection. Of course, there will be times when anxiety feels overwhelming, when practice seems impossible. In those moments, patience is vital. We remind ourselves, it is okay to struggle. It is okay to begin again. Each small act of mindfulness, each moment of compassion, is a seed planted. Over time, these seeds grow into resilience. The storms still come, but the roots run deeper, the branches sway more gently, the heart remains steadier. Anxiety teaches us humility. It shows us that control is an illusion, that certainty is unattainable. But in releasing the need for control, we discover freedom. We learn to walk with uncertainty, to rest in not knowing, to trust the unfolding of life. This trust is not blind optimism, but deep acceptance. It is the wisdom of the heart that says, I cannot predict tomorrow, but I can be fully here today. As this understanding deepens, anxiety begins to transform. It may still arise, but it no longer defines us. It becomes a wave that passes, not a storm that drowns. It becomes a teacher that points us back to presence, back to compassion, back to the freedom of letting go. And so, we arrive at the threshold of a new question. If anxiety can be softened through presence, what happens when we face even deeper patterns, habits of craving and aversion that repeat again and again, binding us in cycles of suffering? This question leads us to the next part of the journey, exploring the endless loops of desire and dissatisfaction, and the wisdom that can free us from the wheel that never seems to stop turning. The face of anxiety is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is the subtle unease that lingers when nothing seems wrong. A quiet tension in the background, like static on a radio that never turns off. Many live entire lives with this low hum of fear, so accustomed to it that they forget what peace feels like. This is why anxiety is so powerful. It disguises itself as normal, convincing us that constant unease is simply the price of being alive. But life is not meant to be lived in permanent restlessness. The Buddha's teachings remind us that peace is our natural state, like a clear sky always present behind passing clouds. Anxiety is one kind of cloud. It may cover the sky completely, but it is not the sky itself. When we remember this, we stop believing that anxiety defines us. We begin to trust that peace is possible, not as a distant dream, but as the truth beneath the noise. One way to touch this peace is through the practice of naming and allowing. When anxiety rises, instead of fighting it, we say gently, "Hello, anxiety. I see you." This simple acknowledgement creates space. It prevents us from fusing with the fear. Anxiety is present, yes, but it is not the whole of us. Like a guest arriving at the door, we greet it without panic, without resistance. We invite it in for tea, to sit quietly. Often, when we stop pushing anxiety away, it begins to soften on its own. There is a famous story of a monk who was plagued by terrifying visions while meditating in a cave. At first, he tried to drive them away, to banish them with effort. But the more he resisted, the stronger they became. Finally, exhausted, he bowed to them and offered them tea. In that moment of radical acceptance, the visions lost their power and disappeared. Anxiety, too, is like those visions. The more we resist, the stronger it grows. The more we turn toward it with openness, the more it loses its grip. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It does not mean we enjoy anxiety or give up on healing. It means we stop adding a second layer of suffering, resistance. When we allow anxiety to be here without judgment, we stop feeding it with fear. We learn that we can hold fear gently without being consumed by it. This shift is subtle but transformative. Another practice is to trace anxiety back to the present moment. Anxiety thrives on what if. What if I fail? What if I lose? What if disaster strikes? These are always about the future, never the now. When we bring our attention fully into the present, this breath, this sound, this sensation, anxiety has no ground to stand on. It cannot survive without projection into tomorrow. By returning again and again to the present, we cut off its fuel. This does not mean the mind will stop imagining fearful futures. It will, but we learn to meet those thoughts as thoughts, not as predictions. When the mind says, "What if I fail?" we respond, "This is a thought, not reality." We breathe, we return to now. With practice, this becomes a habit, not to be pulled endlessly into imagined futures, but to rest in what is real right now. Still, anxiety can be persistent. Sometimes it seems to return no matter how much we practice. In these moments, patience is key. Healing is not linear. Some days will feel light, others heavy. The goal is not to eradicate anxiety, but to change our relationship with it. Each time we meet it with mindfulness and compassion, we weaken its hold, even if only a little. Over time, these small acts add up. Anxiety may still visit, but it no longer controls the house. Gratitude is another antidote. Anxiety focuses on what could go wrong, narrowing our vision to danger. Gratitude broadens our vision to what is already good. When fear rises, we can pause and notice one simple blessing: the breath, the warmth of the sun, the sound of a bird. These small acknowledgments remind us that not everything is threatening, not everything is dangerous. Gratitude does not erase anxiety, but it balances it, reminding us that life is more than fear. Connection also plays a vital role. Anxiety isolates, convincing us we are alone in our struggles. But when we speak openly, when we share our fears, we discover how common they are. Almost everyone has known the grip of worry, the racing heart, the restless mind. This recognition creates solidarity. We realize that anxiety is not a personal failure, but a human experience. In community, the burden lightens. We breathe together, we practice together, we heal together. There is also wisdom in remembering that anxiety often points to care. We worry because we care about our health, our families, our futures. If we did not care, we would not fear. In this sense, anxiety reveals love. The challenge is that the love is tangled with fear. By separating the two, we can honor the care while releasing the fear. We can say, "I care deeply about this," without needing to control every outcome. This reframing turns anxiety from a curse into a sign of compassion. The Buddha taught that freedom arises when we release clinging. Anxiety is a form of clinging to control, to certainty, to safety. When we loosen the grip, Even slightly, anxiety softens. We discover that we do not need to know every outcome. We do not need to secure every future. We can live in uncertainty with trust. This trust is not blind faith, but a deep acceptance of life as it is. We trust that whatever arises, we will meet it. We trust that peace is possible, even in uncertainty. In this way, anxiety becomes a doorway. It teaches us humility, reminding us that we are not in control of everything. It teaches us compassion, reminding us that we are vulnerable, like all beings. It teaches us presence, reminding us to return to now. And through these teachings, it guides us toward freedom. The journey does not end here. Anxiety is one layer of suffering, but beneath it lie deeper patterns, the cycles of craving and aversion that repeat endlessly, keeping us bound in dissatisfaction. Just as anxiety clings to control, craving clings to desire. We chase what we think will save us, only to discover leaves us empty. This cycle, called the wheel of becoming, spins endlessly until we learn to step off. And so, as we leave the exploration of anxiety, we step toward the next truth, that life cycles, however painful, are not punishments, but teachers. They repeat until we see them clearly. They trap us until we learn their lesson. By understanding these cycles, we can begin to transform them, turning repetition into liberation and suffering into wisdom. Desire has many faces. Sometimes it appears as hunger for food, sometimes as lust for pleasure, sometimes as ambition for power or recognition. At its root, desire is the restless voice that says, "This is not enough. I need more." No matter how much we achieve, acquire, or consume, the hunger returns. It is like a fire that grows stronger the more we feed it. For many people, this cycle of craving and dissatisfaction becomes the central rhythm of life. Consider the person who works tirelessly for a promotion. At last, it comes. For a moment, joy flares brightly. But soon, the joy fades, replaced by the next craving. A higher salary, a larger office, more respect. Or consider the person who buys the newest phone, savoring the shine of ownership. Yet within months, it feels old, replaced by the longing for the next upgrade. In this way, desire tricks us into running endlessly, like a hamster spinning in a wheel that never stops. This wheel is not limited to possessions. It spins in relationships too. We long for love, for intimacy, for someone who will finally complete us. But when we find love, we discover it is imperfect. We grow restless, chasing the fantasy of something better. Or we cling desperately, fearing loss, and in our clinging, we suffocate the very love we sought. The cycle repeats, leaving us tired, unsatisfied, confused. The Buddha called this cycle samsara, the endless round of craving and dissatisfaction. It is the root of suffering, because it never allows us to rest. We believe that if we can just reach the next goal, the next purchase, the next relationship, we will finally be at peace. But peace never comes that way. The horizon always moves further, leaving us chasing shadows. This truth can be painful to face. It challenges the very stories we are told by society, that happiness lies in achievement, consumption, and constant progress. Advertisements promise fulfillment in every product. Success stories promise salvation in wealth and fame. The world tells us that desire is the fuel of happiness, but in truth, it is the fuel of dissatisfaction. Desire may bring moments of pleasure, but it never brings lasting contentment. Pleasure itself is not the problem. The taste of delicious food, the beauty of music, the joy of touch, these are part of life's richness. The problem is attachment. We grasp at pleasure, demanding it last forever, demanding it rescue us from emptiness. When it fades, as all things do, we suffer. If we could enjoy pleasure without clinging, we would experience joy without suffering. But the mind, conditioned by craving, struggles to let go. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If we keep the hand open, the sand rests gently. But if we close the fist tightly, trying to keep it, the sand slips through our fingers. This is the nature of desire. When we cling, we lose. When we release, we can appreciate without suffering. The Buddha taught that liberation comes not from destroying desire completely, but from transforming our relationship to it. Instead of clinging, we practice awareness. Instead of feeding the fire endlessly, we let it cool. Mindfulness is the first step. When desire arises, we notice it. Here is craving. Here is the hunger for more. We do not need to act on it immediately. We simply observe. Often, the act of noticing is enough to weaken its power. We realize that desire is not a command, but a passing wave. It comes, it swells, it fades. By observing instead of obeying, we begin to step off the wheel. The second step is understanding. We ask, what lies beneath this craving? Often, desire masks deeper needs. The craving for recognition hides the need for self-worth. The craving for possessions hides the need for security. The craving for constant stimulation hides the fear of silence. By seeing the root, we can respond more wisely. Instead of chasing endless substitutes, we can nurture the true need. Self-worth comes not from applause, but from self-compassion. Security comes not from accumulation, but from trust in impermanence. Peace comes not from stimulation, but from presence. Generosity is another way to loosen craving's grip. When we give freely, we reverse the habit of grasping. Instead of clinging to possessions, we let them flow. Instead of hoarding, we share. This act of release reminds us that happiness does not come from holding tightly, but from opening the hand. Generosity breaks the illusion of scarcity and reveals the joy of connection. Contentment is the natural fruit of this practice. Contentment does not mean resignation. It means recognizing the richness of what is already here. To sit with a simple meal and taste gratitude. To walk under the sky and feel awe. To breathe and know it is enough. Contentment is radical in a culture that thrives on dissatisfaction. It is not flashy, not glamorous, but it is deeply liberating. When the mind rests in contentment, the endless hunger quiets. The Buddha described this as the middle way. Not indulgence, not denial, but balance. Enjoying life's pleasures without clinging. Meeting life's challenges without despair. Walking the path with awareness, compassion, and freedom. In this way, desire is not an enemy, but a teacher. It shows us where we are attached, where we are restless, where we seek happiness outside ourselves. By learning from it, we grow wiser, freer, more at peace. Craving is not limited to the material. It appears even in spiritual practice. We crave enlightenment, crave peace, crave progress. This craving can become another trap, leaving us frustrated when results do not come quickly. But the path is not about craving outcomes. It is about walking step by step with presence. Enlightenment cannot be forced. It unfolds naturally when craving loosens. Even here, the lesson is the same. Let go, breathe, trust the process. The cycle of craving is ancient and deep, but it is not unbreakable. Each moment of awareness, each act of generosity, each breath of contentment weakens its hold. Slowly, the wheel begins to slow. We discover that peace is not at the end of desire's chase. It is here now when we stop running, and yet the pull of desire remains strong. How do we live with it day by day in a world that constantly feeds it? How do we practice contentment when surrounded by messages of more, more, more? These questions lead us deeper into practical wisdom. How to apply these teachings in ordinary life. How to cultivate freedom in the middle of temptation. How to discover that true joy does not lie in the next purchase or achievement, but in the simple miracle of being alive. Not to live wisely with desire does not mean running away from the world. It means walking through it with awareness, like someone moving through a marketplace without being swept away by every stall. The sights, sounds, and temptations are still there, but the heart remains steady. This steadiness is not cold or detached. It is alive with presence. It allows us to enjoy beauty without clinging, to meet challenges without despair. Take the example of food. Eating is natural and necessary, yet craving often distorts it. We eat not because of hunger, but because of boredom, stress, or habit. We crave sugar, salt, excess, and then feel guilt or discomfort. Mindful eating transforms this cycle. When we bring full attention to the act of eating, tasting each bite, feeling gratitude for the nourishment, the compulsion loosens. We discover satisfaction in simplicity, joy in moderation, peace in presence. The same principle applies to every form of desire. When we meet it with awareness, it no longer controls us. Relationships provide another field for practice. Craving tells us that a partner should complete us, fulfill us, erase our loneliness. When they fail to meet this impossible demand, dissatisfaction grows. But if we shift from craving to compassion, relationships transform. We no longer demand perfection. We offer presence. We no longer cling desperately. We love freely. This love is not about possession, but about seeing and supporting the other as they are. In this shift, craving dissolves and genuine connection blossoms. Work, too, can become a cycle of craving. We chase titles, promotions, recognition, believing they will finally prove our worth. But worth cannot be earned through endless striving. Worth is inherent, uncheckable, present even in failure. When we remember this, work becomes a place to express our gifts, not to chase our identity. Success is welcomed, but it does not define us. Failure stings, but it does not destroy us. This freedom is the fruit of releasing craving. One of the deepest cravings is for permanence. We want youth to last forever, health to stay, loved ones never to leave. But life is impermanent. To cling to permanence is to fight against reality itself. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are transient. When we accept this, not with despair but with openness, we discover a new kind of peace. We stop demanding forever and start treasuring now. We see the beauty in a flower precisely because it will fade, the sweetness in a moment precisely because it will pass. Impermanence, when embraced, turns from enemy to teacher. Another craving is for certainty. We want guarantees, clear answers, secure outcomes. But life does not work that way. The future is always uncertain. Craving certainty traps us in anxiety, while accepting uncertainty frees us to live fully. This is not easy. The mind longs for control. But with practice, we learn to rest in don't know. We learn to walk step by step, trusting that clarity will come when needed. This trust is not blind. It is grounded in the truth of impermanence, in the understanding that we can meet whatever arises. Pleasure itself can become an ally when we shift our relationship to it. Instead of grasping, we practice savoring. Instead of demanding more, we practice gratitude. This does not diminish joy. It deepens it. A single sip of tea, savored mindfully, can bring more peace than endless indulgence. A moment of laughter, treasured without clinging, can linger longer than hours of distraction. The secret is not to reject pleasure, but to enjoy it with open hands. Generosity continues to be a powerful antidote. When craving tells us to hold, generosity tells us to release. This release creates space for joy. There is a quiet happiness that comes not from acquiring, but from giving. It may be a gift of money, time, or attention. Whatever form it takes, generosity weakens the grip of craving. It reminds us that abundance is not about accumulation, but about flow. Life itself is generous. The sun gives light, the earth gives food, the breath gives life. When we join in this flow, we align with the rhythm of existence. Contentment is the culmination of these practices. It is not laziness or lack of ambition. It is the deep realization that peace does not depend on more. It is here, now, in the breath, in the body, in the miracle of being alive. Contentment allows us to pursue goals with joy, not desperation. It allows us to enjoy success without clinging, to endure failure without collapse. It is the freedom of a heart no longer enslaved by desire. Still, the path requires vigilance. Craving is subtle. It disguises itself as love, ambition, even spirituality. We may think we are practicing diligently, but secretly crave recognition for being wise. We may think we are loving, but secretly crave to be loved in return. Awareness exposes these disguises. When we see craving clearly, it loses power. We smile at it, not with shame, but with understanding, and gently let it go. Over time, this practice transforms the way we see the world. Instead of chasing endless satisfaction outside ourselves, we discover joy within. The restless hunger quiets. A constant comparison softens. We walk through life more lightly, more freely, more peacefully. This is not the end of desire, but the end of enslavement to desire. The wheel may continue to spin, but we no longer run blindly within it. We step off, we rest, we breathe. And so, as we close this reflection on craving and dissatisfaction, we prepare to turn toward another face of suffering, the relentless noise of the modern mind. Even when cravings are seen clearly, the mind still chatters, restless, distracted, pulled in 1,000 directions. Silence feels unbearable, presence feels elusive. This is the next challenge of modern life, the overstimulated mind, and the wisdom of stillness it can bring it to rest. The modern world is louder than ever. Screens glow late into the night. Notifications buzz in our pockets. News flashes across our eyes. Music blares in our ears. Conversations flood our days. Silence, once a natural part of life, has become rare, almost threatening. Many people cannot sit quietly without reaching for a phone, turning on a show, or filling the air with words. The mind, overstimulated and restless, has forgotten how to be still. This overstimulation creates a constant hum of distraction. We check emails while eating, scroll social media while walking, watch videos while falling asleep. Our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions, never resting fully on one. The result is exhaustion, yet we mistake it for normal life. We tell ourselves we are multitasking, being productive, staying connected. But underneath, the mind is frayed, fragmented, starved of depth. That the suffering of a restless mind is subtle but profound. It prevents us from being present. We eat without tasting, listen without hearing, live without truly experiencing. We skim the surface of life, mistaking constant motion for fullness. But in truth, the absence of stillness leaves us empty. We fill every gap with noise, because silence reveals the very thing we are afraid of. Ourselves dot when silence does appear. It often feels unbearable. Sitting in a quiet room, many feel restless within minutes. Thoughts surge. I should be doing something. I need to check my phone. This is boring. The silence exposes the mind's chatter, and instead of facing it, we escape back into noise. In this way, distraction becomes not just a habit, but an addiction. We use noise to avoid meeting our own hearts. The Buddha understood this long before smartphones existed. He described the mind as a monkey, leaping from branch to branch, never still. Left unchecked, this monkey mind creates suffering. It never rests, never satisfies, never allows peace. But he also taught that stillness is possible. Through mindfulness and meditation, the monkey can be calmed. The mind can rest, like a clear lake reflecting the sky. Meditation is often misunderstood as emptying the mind completely. In truth, it is about seeing the mind clearly. When we sit quietly, thoughts will come memories, worries, plans, judgments. Instead of chasing them or pushing them away, we observe. We watch thoughts arise and pass, like clouds drifting across the sky. Over time, this observation creates space. We realize that we are not the thoughts. We are the awareness beneath them. This realization is the beginning of freedom. The practice of stillness need not be complicated. It can begin with a few breaths taken consciously. Breathing in, we feel the body. Breathing out, we release tension. Even one mindful breath can create a pocket of silence in a noisy day. Slowly, these pockets expand. A walk without headphones becomes meditation. Washing dishes with full attention becomes practice. Silence begins to return, not as emptiness, but as nourishment. The overstimulated mind craves more and more input, but it is never satisfied. Like a person drinking salt water, the more it consumes, the thirstier it becomes. The solution is not more noise, but less. Simplicity is a radical act in a world of excess. Turning off the phone, stepping away from screens, sitting quietly in nature, these simple acts are medicine for the restless mind. They remind us that peace is not found in constant doing, but in being. Stillness does not mean inactivity. It means presence. One can be active while still, moving through life with clarity rather than chaos. A person may work diligently, care for a family, engage with the world, yet carry a still mind within. This stillness is not about the absence of sound, but the absence of compulsion. It is the freedom to choose where attention rests, rather than being dragged by every distraction. The loss of stillness also weakens our ability to listen to ourselves, to others, to life itself. When the mind is noisy, we cannot hear the quiet signals of the heart. We miss the subtle joys of existence. We miss the pain of others hidden beneath their words. We miss the wisdom that arises only in silence. Reclaiming stillness is not a luxury. It is essential for a meaningful life. The Buddha often retreated into forests and quiet places, not to escape the world, but to reconnect with its essence. In silence, he discovered truths that noise concealed. We too can create our own retreats, even in small ways. A morning of quiet, an evening without screens, a walk among trees. These moments of silence recharge the mind, cleanse the heart, and restore balance. Of course, silence can also bring discomfort. When the noise fades, buried emotions rise. Grief, fear, loneliness. This is why many avoid stillness. But facing these emotions is the very path of healing. In silence, we can meet our pain with compassion, allowing it to surface and release. We discover that emotions, like thoughts, are waves. They rise, they fall, they pass. What remains is the vast ocean of awareness, unshaken by the waves. Community can support this practice. Sitting in silence with others, even without words, creates a powerful field of calm. Shared stillness reminds us that we are not alone in seeking peace. It encourages us to stay when the mind resists, to breathe when the restlessness grows. Together, we rediscover the beauty of quiet. Ultimately, the overstimulated mind suffers because it forgets its own nature. It believes peace lies in more input, more distraction, more speed. But true peace is found in slowing down, in listening, in resting. The Buddha called this the cessation of dukkha, the end of unnecessary suffering. It is not found in the next notification, but in the silence between breaths. As we begin to taste this silence, even briefly, we realize it is not empty at all. It is full of presence, full of clarity, full of life. In stillness, we see more clearly, love more deeply, live more fully. The restless mind begins to trust that it does not need constant noise. silence becomes a friend, not a threat. And so, as we reflect on the suffering of the overstimulated mind, we prepare to explore another modern wound: loneliness and disconnection. Just as noise surrounds us yet leaves us restless, relationships surround us yet leave us lonely. The next step of this journey is to face the ache of isolation and to discover how Buddhist wisdom transforms it into connection, compassion, and belonging. The restless mind often resists stillness because it fears what it might find there. Beneath the layers of distraction often lie unhealed wounds, old grief, unspoken regret, unresolved anger. Noise and busyness cover them like a blanket, keeping them out of sight. But when we finally sit in silence, the blanket lifts. Emotions surface, raw and uncomfortable. This is why silence can feel unbearable at first. Yet, it is also why silence heals. Only when the wound is revealed can it begin to mend. The Buddha taught that meditation is like holding a mirror to the mind. At first, the reflection may be messy, scattered thoughts, painful memories, restless energy. But with patience, the mirror clears. We see ourselves honestly, without distortion. This honesty is not easy, but it is liberating. We learn that our thoughts are not permanent, our emotions are not enemies, and our restlessness is not who we are. Awareness itself is deeper than all of them. Many people imagine peace as the absence of thought, but the mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. We cannot force it into silence by willpower. What we can do is change our relationship with thoughts. Instead of clinging to them or pushing them away, we let them flow. Like leaves on a river, they drift by. Some are heavy, some are light, but none need to be grasped. The river moves on, and we remain as the witness. This shift has profound effects. The same mind that once seemed like a storm reveals itself as spacious. Thoughts still come, but they no longer dominate. Emotions still arise, but they no longer drown us. The chatter softens, the space widens, and within that space, clarity grows. We begin to see life with fresh eyes, free from the haze of constant distraction. Daily life offers countless opportunities to cultivate this stillness. A pause before speaking, a mindful sip of tea, a few breaths while waiting in line. These small practices weave silence into the fabric of ordinary life. Over time, they build resilience. The restless mind begins to trust silence, to rest in it, to welcome it. Technology presents both challenge and opportunity. The same devices that bombard us with distraction can also remind us to pause. A phone can deliver endless noise, or it can deliver a gentle reminder to breathe. The difference lies in how we use it. Mindfulness invites us to ask, is this action nourishing or draining? Is this input deepening awareness or scattering it? With these questions, we regain agency over our attention. Technology becomes a tool, not a tyrant. Community silence is another powerful practice. Sitting in meditation with others, even without words, creates a collective field of stillness. The mind resists less when it feels supported. The silence deepens when shared. This is why monasteries, temples, and retreat centers have always emphasized community practice. Even in modern life, we can gather with friends for quiet sitting, or simply agree to share moments without phones, without chatter, without distraction. In that shared silence, connection blossoms. It is important to recognize that stillness is not the end goal, but the doorway. It opens us to deeper wisdom. In stillness, we see impermanence more clearly. We watch sensations arise and pass, thoughts appear and vanish, emotions swell and dissolve. We realize that clinging to any of them is futile. This insight brings freedom. We stop demanding permanence in a world that is always changing. Stillness also deepens compassion. When the mind is restless, we are consumed by ourselves, our worries, our distractions, our needs. But in silence, the walls thin. We feel the presence of others more vividly. We recognize their struggles, their joys, their humanity. Compassion flows naturally when the noise of self-centeredness quiets. The return to stillness also restores creativity. A noisy mind cannot see clearly, cannot imagine fully. Ideas become tangled in distraction. But in silence, space opens. New insights emerge. New perspectives unfold. Many artists, thinkers, and innovators have spoken of their greatest ideas arising not in noise, but in stillness, in walks, in solitude, in moments of quiet. The Buddha himself discovered enlightenment, not in debate or noise, but in deep silence beneath a tree. And perhaps most importantly, stillness reconnects us to wonder. In the quiet, we notice the miracle of breath, the beauty of light, the simple gift of being alive. The ordinary becomes extraordinary when seen without distraction. A bird's song, a child's laughter, a breeze on the skin. These small moments shine when the mind is quiet enough to notice them. The path of stillness is not about escaping the world, but about living in it more fully. We still work, love, struggle, and grow. But we do so with clarity rather than chaos, with presence rather than distraction. The world remains noisy, but within, a deep silence holds steady. This inner silence becomes a refuge, a home we can return to in every moment. And so, having explored the suffering of the restless mind and the gift of silence, we turn now to another wound of modern life: loneliness and disconnection. Just as overstimulation leaves us empty in the midst of noise, disconnection leaves us empty in the midst of people. Loneliness is not merely the absence of company, but the absence of true connection. It is time to face this ache directly and to discover how the Buddha's wisdom can transform it into belonging, compassion, and the joy of being together. Loneliness is one of the deepest wounds of the modern world. Never before in history have people been so connected through technology, yet so many feel utterly alone. A person may have hundreds of online friends, countless contacts in their phone, a busy schedule filled with meetings, and still feel an aching emptiness inside. This is the paradox of modern life, surrounded by people, yet starved of connection. Loneliness is not just being alone. It is the feeling of being unseen, unheard, misunderstood. It is lying awake at night with no one to share your thoughts. It is sitting in a crowded room and feeling invisible. It is walking through daily life with a mask, hiding your true self because you fear rejection. The pain of loneliness can be sharper than physical pain, and it leaves scars that linger long after the moment has passed. Science confirms what the heart already knows. Loneliness harms. It weakens the body, fuels anxiety and depression, and shortens life expectancy. But beyond biology, it erodes the soul. Loneliness whispers lies. You are not lovable. You do not belong. No one truly cares. When these lies take root, they shape how we see ourselves and how we move in the world. We withdraw. We build walls. We stop reaching out, which only deepens the isolation. The Buddha understood this pain long before it was studied. He saw that human beings suffer when they feel separate from themselves, from others, from life. He taught that at the deepest level, separation is an illusion. Just as waves belong to the ocean, we belong to the web of existence. When we forget this, we feel isolated. When we remember it, we feel connected. Even in solitude, modern culture often confuses connection with performance. Social media encourages us to show the best version of ourselves, hiding the messy reality. But connection requires honesty, not perfection. True belonging arises when we dare to be vulnerable, to show our flaws as well as our strengths. When we hide behind masks, we may gain attention, but we lose intimacy. Attention is shallow, intimacy is deep. Only honesty can bridge the gap. Loneliness also arises when we expect others to fill a void that only we can address. We hope a partner will rescue us from emptiness. A friend will erase our pain. A group will guarantee our belonging. But when we lean too heavily on others, we place impossible demands on them. No one can complete us. True connection begins within, with the relationship we have to ourselves. If we cannot sit with our own company, no amount of external company will heal the ache. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes compassion for oneself. When loneliness arises, instead of judging it, we hold it gently. We place a hand on the heart and say, "I see you. I know this hurts. May I be kind to myself." This simple act of self-compassion shifts the dynamic. Loneliness is no longer an enemy, but a signal, a reminder of our deep need for connection. By responding with kindness, we soothe the wound and create space for healing. Mindfulness also transforms loneliness. Instead of being consumed by the thought, "I am alone," we return to the present moment. We notice the breath, the sounds around us, the ground beneath our feet. We realize that in this very moment, we are connected to the air that sustains us, to the earth that holds us, to the countless beings also breathing, also living. Loneliness shrinks when we remember that existence itself is connection. Community, or Sangha, is central in Buddhist tradition. The Buddha knew that the path of awakening is difficult alone. We need others to walk with us, to remind us of our strength, to support us in times of weakness. Community does not erase loneliness entirely, but it creates spaces where belonging can flourish. In community, we practice listening deeply, speaking honestly, and supporting without judgment. These simple acts build the bonds that loneliness longs for. Yet even within community, loneliness can linger. We may feel out of place, misunderstood, or different. Here, equanimity becomes vital. Equanimity teaches us that belonging is not about everyone loving us, but about being at peace with ourselves. When we rest in our own worth, we no longer chase acceptance desperately. We can enjoy connection when it comes, without collapsing when it fades. This stability makes true connection more possible, because it is no longer driven by fear. Generosity is another medicine for loneliness. When we give our time, our attention, our care, we step out of isolation. Loneliness contracts the heart, turning us inward in pain. Generosity opens the heart, turning us outward in compassion. Even a small act of smile, a kind word, a helping hand breaks the illusion of separation. In giving, we remember that we are part of the human family, bound together by shared needs and shared joys. There is also wisdom in learning to befriend solitude. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness says, "I am incomplete without others." Solitude says, "I am whole, and I can enjoy my own company." When we learn to sit quietly, to read, to walk, to breathe alone without fear, we discover that solitude can be nourishing. It becomes a space to rest, to reflect, to connect with ourselves. From this foundation, connection with others becomes richer, because it is no longer desperate but free. Impermanence offers comfort as well. Loneliness, like all experiences, rises and falls. It may feel endless when it is here, but it will pass. Trusting this truth gives us strength to endure the ache without despair. We remember that loneliness is not a life sentence, but a passing wave. When we hold it with patience, it softens in time, and so the path through loneliness is not about finding perfect relationships or constant company. It is about transforming how we see ourselves and others. It is about softening the walls of fear, cultivating compassion, practicing presence, and daring to be honest. In doing so, loneliness becomes less a curse and more a teacher. It teaches us the value of connection, the power of kindness, and the truth that we belong, not because of what we achieve, but because we exist. From here, A question naturally arises: how do we deepen this transformation, turning loneliness into belonging in the middle of daily life with its struggles and imperfections? The answer lies in practices of forgiveness, vulnerability, and joy in shared humanity. These practices expand connection beyond fleeting interactions, grounding it in the deep recognition that we are never truly separate, never truly alone. Forgiveness plays an essential role in healing loneliness. Many people carry invisible walls built from old wounds, betrayals by friends, rejections in love, misunderstandings in family. These wounds create fear. Fear of reaching out again. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of showing vulnerability. And so we hide behind walls, safe from pain, but also safe from connection. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks these walls. It does not mean denying the hurt, but releasing the grip of resentment. It means saying, yes, I was wounded, but I will not let this wound define the rest of my life. With forgiveness, the heart reopens, ready to trust again. Forgiveness of ourselves is equally vital. Many feel unworthy of connection because of mistakes they made in the past. Shame isolates as much as rejection does. We punish ourselves, telling stories like, I am too flawed to be loved. I do not deserve to belong. But the truth is that all beings are imperfect. All beings stumble. The Buddha's compassion extended even to the most broken, reminding us that worth is not earned by perfection. When we forgive ourselves, we allow others to enter our lives without the barrier of shame. Vulnerability is another bridge from loneliness to connection. In a culture that prizes strength and independence, many hide their struggles. We wear masks of success, of happiness, of control, even while feeling empty inside. But masks prevent intimacy. Only when we dare to show our real selves, the fears, the doubts, the imperfections, can true connection form. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. It says, this is who I am. Will you still stand with me? Often, when we risk vulnerability, we discover that others feel the same, and in that shared truth, loneliness dissolves. The Buddha encouraged honesty in speech, not only to avoid lies, but to foster genuine connection. Deep listening and truthful speaking create intimacy. When we share our struggles honestly, we give others permission to do the same. Loneliness thrives in silence, but it shrinks when voices rise in truth. Even a simple admission, I feel lonely, can open a doorway to compassion. Someone else may respond, I do too, and in that moment, both hearts feel less alone. Joy in shared humanity also transforms loneliness. Instead of focusing on differences, we recognize what we all share: breath, struggle, longing, impermanence. When we see this, compassion flows more easily. A stranger's smile feels like kinship. A child's laughter feels like our own joy. The boundaries between self and other soften. We belong, not because we fit into a specific group, but because we are part of life itself. Community helps to cultivate this recognition. Whether through spiritual sanghas, support groups, or friendships, gathering with others in sincerity heals the wound of disconnection. Community is not perfect. Conflicts will arise, misunderstandings will occur. But even with imperfection, community offers something loneliness cannot: a reminder that we are not meant to carry life alone. The Buddha's disciples often practiced together in silence, walked together in mindfulness, shared meals together with gratitude. These simple acts built bonds that lasted a lifetime. In our time, building community may mean small steps: inviting a neighbor for tea, joining a local group, reaching out to a friend. It may mean creating intentional spaces for deep conversation rather than shallow chatter. It may mean sitting together in silence or working together in service. Each act of connection, however small, weakens the grip of loneliness. At the same time, Solitude can become an ally rather than enemy. When we cultivate inner stillness, loneliness loses some of its sting. We discover that we can enjoy our own company, that silence can nourish rather than frighten. This shift makes connection freer because it is no longer driven by desperation. We connect because we want to, not because we cannot bear to be alone. In this balance between solitude and community, we find harmony. Impermanence reminds us that loneliness itself is not permanent. It rises, it falls, it changes. A person who feels isolated today may find connection tomorrow. A season of emptiness may give way to a season of belonging. Trusting this flow gives us courage to endure the hard moments without despair. It teaches us patience, the willingness to wait with open hands for connection to return. Ultimately, the Buddha's wisdom teaches that true belonging is not found in external approval, but in inner freedom. When we rest in our own worth, we no longer chase belonging frantically. We can walk into a room alone and still feel whole. We can face rejection and still know we are valuable. From this foundation, connections become deeper because they are no longer based on need, but on freedom. Loneliness then becomes a teacher. It shows us the pain of disconnection, but also the value of compassion. It reminds us of our shared humanity. It calls us to soften, to forgive, to open, to connect. And when we listen, it guides us back to belonging, not the shallow belonging of fitting in, but the deep belonging of being fully ourselves, fully human, fully alive. From here, the path turns toward another form of suffering, the fear of death and the mystery of impermanence. Just as loneliness teaches us about connection, death teaches us about life. Many live in denial of death, but the Buddha taught that remembering impermanence is the key to freedom. By facing death directly, we discover how to live more fully, more lovingly, more present in each moment. Death is the shadow that follows every life. It is the truth we all know but rarely face. From the moment we are born, every breath carries us closer to the final breath. Yet in modern society, death is hidden away, spoken of in whispers, treated as failure rather than reality. We celebrate youth, idolize vitality, and push the elderly and dying to the margins. But no matter how far we try to hide from it, death waits for all of us. The fear of death shapes much of human life. It hides beneath ambitions as we chase wealth or fame to leave a mark that outlasts us. It hides beneath cravings as we seek pleasure to distract us from our mortality. It hides beneath conflict as we cling to control in a world we know we cannot ultimately control. Whether we admit it or not, the awareness of impermanence colors everything we do. Asterisk for many, the thought of death brings terror. We imagine the loss of everything we know, the vanishing of identity, the darkness of nothingness. We fear the deaths of loved ones, knowing that grief will tear open our hearts. We fear our own death, not knowing when or how it will come. This fear drives us to resist impermanence, to cling desperately to what cannot last. And in clinging, we suffer. The Buddha saw clearly that impermanence is not a curse, but the very nature of existence. All things, bodies, emotions, relationships, worlds arise and pass away. Nothing is fixed, nothing is forever. To deny this truth is to struggle endlessly against reality. To accept it is to find peace. The Buddha compared life to a river, always flowing, never the same from one moment to the next. To cling to permanence is to cling to water, trying to hold it in a fist. But when we open the hand, we can feel its flow without struggle. Facing death directly is not morbid. It is liberating. When we remember that life is fragile, we stop wasting time on trivialities. Petty arguments lose their grip. Grudges soften. Gratitude grows. Each moment becomes precious because we know it cannot be repeated. Instead of fearing impermanence, we learn to treasure it. The cherry blossom is beautiful because it blooms briefly. The sunset is glorious because it fades. Our lives, too, shine more brightly when we embrace their brevity. Mindfulness of death was a core practice in Buddhist tradition. Monks would meditate in graveyards, contemplating the decay of bodies. This was not to create despair, but to strip away illusion. By seeing clearly the reality of death, they learned to live without fear. The same practice can guide us today. We need not sit among graves, but we can pause to remember, I will not live forever. Those I love will not live forever. This day will not come again. Far from depressing, this reflection awakens urgency, clarity, and compassion. The fear of death often arises from attachment to self. We identify with our bodies, our names, our roles, our stories, believing they are permanent. Death threatens this illusion. But the Buddha taught that the self is not a fixed entity, but a flow of conditions, body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness, arising and passing in each moment. Just as a flame depends on fuel, the self depends on causes and conditions. When the fuel changes, the flame changes. This understanding softens the fear of death, because it shows that what we call self is already impermanent in every moment. Consider the ocean wave. It rises, dances on the surface, and falls back into the sea. From the perspective of the wave, its end may seem like death. But from the perspective of the ocean, nothing is lost. The wave was never separate from the sea. So it is with us. We rise, live, and fall, but we are never separate from the vast ocean of life. Death is not annihilation, but transformation. This perspective does not erase grief. When someone we love dies, the pain is real, the loss undeniable. The Buddha himself wept at the death of those close to him. But he also taught that grief, too, is impermanent. It rises, it overwhelms, and it passes. To grieve is to love, and to love is to open the heart fully to impermanence. The challenge is not to avoid grief, but to allow it, to feel it, and to let it soften into compassion. Compassion, in the face of death, means being present with the dying, offering comfort without clinging. It means holding the hand of a loved one, not in denial, but in gratitude for the shared time. It means remembering that death comes to all, and so every being deserves kindness. This compassion widens our view. We see the fragility of all life, the bird, the tree, the stranger on the street, and our hearts grow gentler. Impermanence also teaches forgiveness. When we remember that life is short, grudges seem heavy, unnecessary burdens. Why carry anger when tomorrow is not guaranteed? Why waste precious time on bitterness? Reflecting on death can open the heart to reconciliation, to letting go, to peace. There is also freedom in realizing that death gives life meaning. If we were immortal, days would blur into one another, urgency lost. But because time is finite, every choice matters. Every moment is sacred. Death is not the enemy of life, but its teacher. It reminds us to love fully, to live deeply, to give generously, to awaken now rather than later. Meditation on impermanence does not remove the pain of death, but it transforms our relationship to it. Instead of fear, we meet it with acceptance. Instead of denial, we meet it with presence. Instead of clinging, we meet it with release. Death becomes not the end of the story, but part of the story. Not a failure, but a natural unfolding. And so, as we explore the truth of death and impermanence, we step closer to freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from clinging, freedom from illusion. Yet a question remains. How do we live with this truth daily, not just in meditation halls or philosophical reflections? The answer lies in cultivating a constant awareness of impermanence in ordinary life, seeing it in every flower, every breath, every goodbye, and allowing it to guide us toward gratitude, compassion, And wisdom to carry the awareness of impermanence into daily life is to see the world with fresh eyes. Each morning, when we wake, we can pause and remember, this day has never been before, and it will never be again. Each conversation, each smile, each breath is unrepeatable. This awareness infuses even the simplest moments with sacredness. Drinking tea becomes a ceremony. Hugging a loved one becomes an act of reverence. Watching the sunset becomes a reminder that beauty and transience are inseparable in Buddhist practice. This awareness is called Marangasati mindfulness of death. It is not meant to create fear, but to awaken gratitude. When we reflect that death could come at any time, we no longer take life for granted. We say, I love you more freely. We forgive more quickly. We pursue what matters instead of wasting time what does not. Death, instead of being a thief, becomes a teacher. It strips away illusion and reveals what is essential. One practical exercise is to imagine the end of life. Lying on a bed, looking back, what will matter? Will it be the hours spent scrolling through distractions, or the moments of presence with loved ones? Will it be the possessions hoarded, or the kindness given? When we place ourselves in this perspective, our priorities shift. We live not for endless accumulation, but for meaningful connection. We measure not by what we achieve, but by how we love. Facing impermanence also frees us from perfectionism. Many waste years waiting until everything is just right, until they are good enough, prepared enough, strong enough. But perfection never comes, and time slips away. When we remember death, we stop waiting. We act now, speak now, live now. We accept imperfection as part of life's fleeting beauty. The cracked bowl still holds tea. The flawed life still holds joy. For those who fear the unknown of death, Buddhist teaching offers comfort through the truth of interdependence. Nothing truly vanishes. It transforms. A leaf falls, decays, and nourishes the soil. A body dies, and its elements return to earth, air, water, fire. The cycle continues endlessly. We are not isolated beings disappearing into nothing. We are threads in the great fabric of existence. Death is a change of form, not an erasure of being. Meditation deepens this understanding. Sitting quietly, we can observe the small deaths that happen every moment. The in-breath arises and dies into the out-breath. A thought appears, lingers, and dissolves. A sensation tingles, fades, and vanishes. Life is already a continuous cycle of arising and passing. When we see this clearly, death no longer feels like a sudden catastrophe, but part of the same rhythm that has always been. This awareness also transforms grief. When a loved one dies, the ache of absence is real. But if we look deeply, we see they are not gone entirely. Their smile lives in our memory, their influence in our choices, their love in our heart. Even physically, they live on. In the earth they return to, in the air we all share, in the interconnection of all life. To grieve is human, but grief softens when we see that nothing is ever truly lost. The Buddha reminded his followers often of impermanence, not to frighten them, but to encourage diligence. Do not waste your life, he urged, for death may come at any time. This urgency is not harsh, but compassionate. It reminds us that our time is short, and so we must use it wisely. Not in endless worry, not in ceaseless striving, but in mindful living. Each moment fully lived is victory over death, because it cannot be taken away once it has been embraced. Impermanence also deepens joy. When we know a flower will wilt, we cherish its bloom. When we know a child will grow, we treasure their laughter. When we know life is short, we celebrate it more. The fleeting nature of things does not diminish their value. It multiplies it. Every goodbye becomes more tender, every encounter more precious, every day more radiant. And so, death, which once seemed the greatest enemy, becomes an ally. It awakens us to gratitude. It calls us to compassion. It teaches us the futility of clinging and the freedom of release. It shows us that life's beauty lies not in permanence, but in change. By facing death, we learn how to live. Asterisk from here, the path opens toward another form of suffering, the burden of anger and resentment. Just as fear of death weighs heavily on the heart, so too does anger. Many carry grudges for years, burning with bitterness. These emotions poison relationships, cloud judgment, and block peace. But the Buddha taught that anger can be transformed, just as fear can. By turning toward forgiveness and compassion, we can release the fire that consumes us and step into the cool freedom of peace. Anger is a fire that burns within the heart. It begins as a spark, a word that offends, a betrayal that wounds, a frustration that lingers, and soon the spark spreads, consuming peace, clouding judgment, poisoning relationships. We tell ourselves that anger gives us strength, that it protects us from harm, that it proves our worth. But in truth, anger burns us first. The Buddha said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." Resentment is anger's shadow. While anger flares hot and bright, resentment smolders in silence. It hides beneath polite smiles, behind closed doors, in late-night thoughts that replay old wounds again and again. Unlike sudden bursts of anger, resentment can last for years, even decades, shaping how we see others and ourselves. It whispers constantly, "They wronged me. They don't deserve forgiveness. I will never let this go." Yet while resentment feels like power, it is actually a prison. The walls we build to keep others out end up trapping us inside. Modern life fuels anger in countless ways. The stress of constant demands, the frustration of inequality, the barrage of online arguments, all of these stir the flames. News headlines provoke outrage. Social media amplifies division. Even small inconveniences, a delayed train, a rude remark, trigger disproportionate fury when the mind is already restless and raw. We live in what some call an age of outrage, where anger is not only common but celebrated, mistaken for strength and authenticity. But the cost is high. Anger harms the body with tension and stress. It harms the mind with bitterness and obsession. It harms relationships with harsh words and broken trust. Left unchecked, it erodes empathy and compassion, leaving only hardness. And still, many cling to it, believing that without anger, we are weak. Yet the Buddha taught that true strength lies not in rage, but in restraint, not in retaliation, but in forgiveness, that the first step in transforming anger is awareness. When fury rises, it often hijacks us before we notice. Words fly, actions strike, damage is done. But if we can pause, even for a breath, we create space. We can say to ourselves, "This is anger." Naming it weakens its grip. It reminds us that anger is not who we are, but a passing state of mind. Just as clouds pass through the sky, anger passes through awareness. We do not need to become it. Mindful breathing is a powerful tool here. When anger surges, the breath grows shallow, the heart races, the body tightens. By slowing the breath, we slow the fire. Breathing in, we feel the heat of anger. Breathing out, we release some of its hold. We do not deny it, but we soften it. Over time, this practice creates a habit of pausing before reacting, cooling the fire before it burns out of control. Understanding is the second step. Anger always arises from causes: misunderstanding, fear, unmet needs, or old wounds. When we look deeply, we see that those who hurt us are often themselves suffering. A cruel word may come from someone drowning in their own pain. A betrayal may come from ignorance or fear. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it helps us see them with compassion rather than hatred. When we understand, anger loosens. Consider the story of a monk who was insulted by a villager. Instead of lashing back, he asked calmly, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse it, to whom does the gift belong?" The villager replied, "To the one who tried to give it." The monk smiled, "Then I refuse your gift of anger." This simple wisdom shows that we do not need to accept every insult as truth. We can choose how to respond. We can let the gift of anger remain with the giver. Resentment requires a different kind of work. Unlike sudden anger, resentment is built from repetition. We replay the wound, feeding it with memory, refusing to release it. The only cure is forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean approving of harm or forgetting the wound. It means choosing not to carry the weight any longer. It means saying, "I release this for my own peace." Forgiveness frees us from the prison of resentment, allowing us to live fully again. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as weakness, but in truth, it is one of the hardest and most courageous acts. It requires us to confront pain honestly, to soften pride, to let go of the desire for revenge. It is not a single act, but a process, sometimes slow, sometimes difficult. Some days forgiveness feels possible, other days the wound feels raw again. But with patience and compassion, the heart gradually opens. Compassion, in fact, is the antidote to anger. When we see others as human, flawed, fragile, struggling as we are, hatred dissolves. Compassion does not excuse harm, but it transforms our response. Instead of lashing out, we seek understanding. Instead of perpetuating cycles of violence, we choose peace. Compassion cools the fire where anger would fan it. Generosity also helps to dissolve anger. When we give kindness, even to those who have hurt us, we break the pattern of retaliation. A kind act does not erase harm, but it shifts the energy. It reminds us that we are not bound by resentment, that we can choose another way. Even small gestures, a smile, a gentle word, an act of service create cracks in the walls of anger. Impermanence offers another perspective. Anger feels permanent when it surges, but it always fades. No emotion lasts forever. Remembering this helps us endure its intensity without being consumed. When we say, "This too shall pass," we hold anger more lightly. We trust that time, patience, and practice will transform it. The Buddha compared anger to a storm. During a storm, the sky is dark, the winds fierce, the rains heavy. But no storm lasts forever. The sky clears, the sun returns. Beneath the storm, the vastness of the sky was always present. Our awareness is the sky. Anger is the storm. When we remember this, we stop identifying with the storm. We wait, we breathe, we let it pass. In relationships, anger can be transformed through mindful communication. Instead of accusing, "You always hurt me," we share our feelings. "I feel hurt when this happens." Instead of lashing out, we listen. This practice does not guarantee harmony, but it prevents escalation. It creates space for healing rather than destruction. The deeper truth is that anger harms us more than it harms others. While we burn with rage, the other may be unaware, unaffected. We are the ones losing sleep, carrying tension, replaying wounds. To release anger is to free ourselves. Forgiveness, compassion, patience, they are gifts we give not only to others, but to ourselves. And so, the path of Buddhist wisdom is not to suppress anger, but to transform it, to meet it with awareness, to understand its causes, to soften it with compassion, to release it with forgiveness. In this way, the fire that once consumed us becomes a light that guides us. From here, we begin to see another form of modern suffering, the endless search for meaning. Even when anger softens, many feel a deeper emptiness, a question of purpose, of why we are here, of what truly matters. This spiritual hunger cannot be fed by possessions or achievements. It calls for something deeper, something eternal. This is where the journey leads next, to the search for meaning and the discovery that freedom and purpose are found not outside us, but within. Anger, left unchecked, often becomes a cycle. One person lashes out, another reacts, and the fire spreads. Families are torn apart, friendships end, nations go to war. Each side believes they are justified. Each clings to their wound, and so suffering multiplies. The Buddha saw this clearly and taught, hatred does not end with hatred. Hatred ends with love. Retaliation only deepens the cycle, but compassion breaks it. Breaking the cycle begins with personal responsibility. We cannot control how others act, but we can choose our response. When insulted, we can retaliate or we can breathe. When betrayed, we can seek revenge or we can seek understanding. This choice is not easy, but it is freedom. Each time we choose compassion over anger, we plant seeds of peace instead of violence. Practical steps can help. One method is the practice of loving kindness, or metta meditation. We begin by sending goodwill to ourselves. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. Then we extend it to a loved one, then to a neutral person, then to someone who has hurt us, and finally to all beings. At first, sending kindness to an enemy may feel impossible. The heart resists, the anger returns. But with practice, the walls soften. Even a small crack of compassion weakens resentment's hold. Another method is reflection on common humanity. When we are angry, we see the other as separate, as enemy. But if we look deeply, we see they too seek happiness. They too fear pain. They too suffer. Their actions, however harmful, arise from ignorance or fear. Seeing this does not excuse harm, but it dissolves the illusion of absolute separation. When we recognize shared humanity, compassion becomes possible. Forgiveness can also be practiced in stages. First, we acknowledge the hurt honestly, without denial. Then we reflect on the suffering of the other, seeking to understand. Next, we release the desire for revenge, even if pain remains. Finally, we open the heart to peace, even if full reconciliation is not possible. Forgiveness does not mean allowing harm to continue. Boundaries may be necessary, but forgiveness frees the heart, even when justice still requires action. In daily life, small acts of patience weaken anger's grip. When cut off in traffic, instead of raging, we breathe. When criticized, instead of striking back, we listen. When frustrated, instead of escalating, we pause. These small moments of restraint are victories. Each one trains the heart in compassion. Each one saves us from unnecessary suffering. Anger is often rooted in pride. We feel insulted because our ego is threatened, disrespected, ignored. The Buddha taught humility as the antidote. When we remember that we too make mistakes, that we too cause harm, pride softens. We stop demanding perfection from others and ourselves. Humility does not mean weakness. It means clarity. It frees us from the endless need to defend ego, and in that freedom, anger loses its fuel. Resentment, too, is often tied to the illusion of control. We believe the past should have been different, that others should have acted differently. But the past is fixed. No amount of replaying can change it. Clinging to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other will suffer. When we accept the past as unchangeable, we can release it. We may still feel sadness, but the chains of bitterness break. The Buddha used the image of a lute string to describe balance. If the string is too tight, it snaps. If too loose, it makes no sound. Anger and suppression are like these extremes. Indulging anger destroys peace. Denying anger weakens the heart. The middle way is awareness, acknowledging anger without letting it control us, holding it without being consumed. This balance creates harmony, like a perfectly tuned instrument. The transformation of anger has ripple effects. In families, it creates harmony where once there was tension. In communities, it fosters dialogue where once there was division. In nations, it can pave the way to reconciliation instead of war. While we may feel powerless against global conflict, we hold immense power in our own hearts. Every time we choose compassion over anger, we contribute to peace in the world. Anger is not always destructive. It can reveal injustice, signal harm, call for change. But even righteous anger must be tempered with wisdom. If left unchecked, it turns destructive, harming the very causes we fight for. The Buddha encouraged action rooted in compassion, not hatred. To see injustice clearly, to respond firmly, but without losing love. This is the path of true strength. Over time, practicing mindfulness, forgiveness, compassion, and humility transforms anger into energy for good. The fire that once burned destructively becomes warmth that lights the way. The sharp edge of resentment becomes the soft embrace of understanding. Where there was division, there is connection. Where there was bitterness, there is peace. And so, as we complete this reflection on anger and resentment, we turn toward the final suffering of this journey, the longing for meaning. Even when anger fades, loneliness heals, and fears soften, many still ask, what is the purpose of it all? Why am I here? What truly matters? This question, ancient and universal, leads us to the heart of Buddhist wisdom, the discovery that meaning is not found in endless seeking, but in awakening to the truth of life as it is. There comes a point, often after years of chasing, when a strange emptiness begins to grow. A person may have achieved success, built a family, gathered wealth, and still feel an ache inside. The goals once burning with promise now seem hollow. The victories that once thrilled now fade quickly. Even pleasures that once satisfied lose their taste. Beneath it all, a quiet question whispers, is this all there is? This question haunts many in modern life. Surrounded by material abundance, people still feel spiritually starved. Surrounded by entertainment, they feel bored. Surrounded by information, they feel lost. The emptiness is not about lacking things, but about lacking meaning. Without a sense of purpose, life becomes a series of motions without depth, a story without a center. Some respond by chasing more success, more pleasure, more distraction. But the hunger only grows. Others sink into despair, believing life has no meaning at all. Both paths lead to suffering, because both avoid the truth. Meaning is not something we find outside ourselves. It is something we uncover within. The Buddha taught that life's emptiness is not a flaw, but a doorway. He spoke of sunyata, often translated as emptiness, but not meaning void or nothingness. It means that all things lack fixed, independent essence. Everything arises from causes and conditions. Everything is interconnected. Everything is fluid. When we cling to rigid meaning, I must be this, life must be that, we suffer because reality does not fit our boxes. But when we see the fluidity, the interconnection, we discover a deeper meaning. Life is meaningful not because it fits a script, but because it is alive, ever-changing, and shared. Consider a single flower. At first glance, it seems simple, self-contained. But look deeply. It contains the soil, the rain, the sun, the seed, the gardener. It contains the whole universe. Without these, it could not exist. The flower has no separate essence, yet it is full of life. In the same way, we are not isolated beings struggling to create meaning out of nothing. We are part of the great web of existence, and meaning flows through that connection. This perspective shifts the question. Instead of asking, what is the meaning of life? We begin to ask, how can I live meaningfully in this moment? The answer does not come from grand philosophies, but from presence. When we are mindful, Even small acts shine with purpose. Sharing a meal becomes sacred. Listening deeply becomes an offering. Breathing consciously becomes a reminder that being alive is itself a miracle. The longing for meaning often arises because we look for permanence in a world of impermanence. We want a fixed purpose that will never change, a grand destiny written in stone. But life does not work that way. Purposes shift, seasons change, identities evolve. A parent's meaning may come from raising children, a teacher's from guiding students, and artists from creating beauty. Over time, these roles change, but meaning does not disappear, it transforms. Accepting this impermanence frees us from despair when one chapter ends. We trust that another meaning will arise, just as dawn follows night. The Buddha also taught that meaning comes through compassion. When we turn inward too much, asking only, "What is my purpose?" we risk falling into self-obsession. But when we turn outward, asking, "How can I ease suffering? How can I bring kindness?" life opens. Meaning is not found in isolation, but in service, however small. Offering a smile, listening with patience, helping a stranger. These acts weave us into the fabric of humanity. And in that fabric, we find belonging. Meditation deepens this discovery. In silence, we face the emptiness directly. At first, it feels frightening, like staring into a void. But with patience, we see that emptiness is not barren, it is spacious. It holds everything, allows everything. Emptiness is like the sky. It has no shape of its own, but because of it, clouds and stars can appear. Our lives, too, rest in this vast openness. Instead of fearing it, we can rest in it, letting meaning arise naturally from the unfolding of each moment. This shift dissolves the pressure to figure everything out. We no longer demand that life deliver a single grand answer. Instead, we live with openness, trusting that meaning reveals itself in living. A laugh shared, a hand held, a breath taken each moment holds enough meaning when we are present for it. Stories from the Buddhist tradition echo this truth. One disciple asked the Buddha about the grand purpose of existence. The Buddha did not respond with theory, but with practice. Walk the path. Be mindful. Cultivate compassion. Meaning, he taught, is not an abstract idea, but a lived reality. It is discovered in the act of living fully, not in endless speculation. Modern culture pressures us to prove our worth through achievements. But when we measure meaning only by accomplishment, we miss the quiet depth of ordinary life. A mother rocking her child, a farmer tending the land, a friend sitting in silence with another. These acts may never make headlines, but they carry profound meaning. The Buddha's wisdom invites us to honor the ordinary as sacred. Emptiness also liberates us from the fear of failure. If meaning is not fixed, then no mistake defines us. No failure erases purpose. We can begin again and again, each moment fresh. This resilience is itself a source of meaning, the ability to grow, to learn, to transform. The river of life flows forward, and we flow with it, carried not by certainty, but by openness. And so, the aching question, is this all there is? Transforms. The answer is not found in some distant goal, but in this very breath, this very act of kindness, this very awareness. Life is not waiting to be meaningful someday. It is meaningful now. If we awaken to it. From here, the journey continues. If emptiness is the doorway, what lies on the other side is freedom. The discovery that life's meaning is not imposed from outside, but lived from within. In the next reflection, we will explore how to embody this freedom daily, turning the longing for meaning into a practice of presence, compassion, and joy in the ever-changing flow of life. The search for meaning often begins with dissatisfaction, but it can end in awakening. When we realize that the endless chase for external validation will never fill the inner void, we turn inward. The Buddha's path invites us to look not for something grand and distant, but for the living truth of each moment. It asks us to stop asking, "What will give my life meaning someday?" and start asking, "How am I living meaningfully now?" One of the most powerful teachings is that meaning is not something to possess, but something to practice. We practice meaning each time we show kindness, each time we breathe with awareness, each time we let go of resentment, each time we live with gratitude. Life may not give us the answers we crave, but it offers us countless opportunities to live in a way that matters. Purpose does not have to be extraordinary. It does not need to appear in grand achievements or dramatic stories. It can be found in small daily actions. A teacher helping a child learn, a nurse easing a patient's pain, a neighbor offering food to someone in need. These moments may seem small, but they ripple outward, touching lives beyond what we see. The Buddha taught that even a drop of water can fill a jar over time. In the same way, small acts of goodness accumulate into a life of profound meaning. Another dimension of meaning comes from acceptance. Much suffering arises from the belief that our lives must look a certain way. We compare ourselves constantly, our careers, our families, our bodies, our accomplishments, and judge ourselves as lacking. This judgment deepens the feeling of emptiness. But when we accept our lives as they are, imperfections and all, we discover peace. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means seeing reality clearly and working with it instead of against it. In this clarity, meaning arises naturally. Gratitude also transforms emptiness. When we pause to notice what is already here, the breath, the sky, the love we have received, the opportunities life has given, we realize that life itself is meaningful. Gratitude shifts our focus from what is missing to what is present. It teaches us that we do not need to chase endlessly to feel fulfilled. The fullness is already here, waiting to be seen. The teaching of interbeing, often emphasized in Buddhist wisdom, expands meaning beyond the self. We exist not as isolated individuals, but as part of a vast web of life. Our actions affect others. Their actions affect us. When we live with awareness of this interconnectedness, our choices become infused with responsibility and compassion. We realize that meaning is not about personal glory, but about contributing to the well-being of all. Even small acts, when seen in this light, become sacred offerings to the whole. Meditation reveals another truth, that the longing for meaning itself can be softened. When we sit in silence, letting go of grasping, we discover a spaciousness beyond the question. In this space, we do not need to know the meaning of life to live fully. We simply live aware and awake. The question dissolves into presence. The ache of why transforms into the wonder of this. Impermanence also brings perspective. If nothing lasts, then meaning is not found in permanence, but in participation. The flower does not last forever, yet its bloom is meaningful. The song fades, yet it brings joy while it plays. Our lives, too, are meaningful not because they last forever, but because we live them fully while they are here. This shift frees us from despair. It reminds us that fleeting does not mean empty. Service deepens this realization. When we give ourselves to others, not from obligation, but from love, we discover a meaning that transcends the self. A life lived for others, even in small ways, becomes a life rich in purpose. The Buddha himself dedicated his awakening not to escape alone, but to guide others. In following this example, we find that service is not a burden, but a joy, not a loss, but a gain. Ultimately, the Buddhist path points to a profound freedom. We do not need to chase meaning because life itself is meaningful. The breath is enough. The moment is enough. The act of being alive, of participating in the great flow of existence, is enough. When we stop demanding more, we begin to see the wonder of what is already here, the longing for meaning. Then is not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood. It reveals our deep desire for connection, for purpose, for belonging. By meeting this longing with awareness, compassion, and presence, we transform it into a source of wisdom. We learn that life does not need to be explained to be lived fully. It needs to be lived moment by moment with open eyes and an open heart. And so, as we close this journey through the pains of modern life and the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, we see the thread that weaves it all together. Suffering is not the end of the story. Each pain, stress, anxiety, loneliness, anger, emptiness carries within it a doorway. Through awareness, compassion, and wisdom, these doorways open into freedom.